Artificial gravity. It's one of those fascinating ideas that feels like it's right out of a science fiction movie, yet it's something scientists and engineers have been thinking about for decades. But what exactly is artificial gravity, and why do we need it for space exploration? The concept of gravity is something we deal with every day without even thinking about it. Here on Earth, gravity is what keeps us grounded, literally. But when astronauts venture into space, they leave that familiar force behind. In zero-gravity environments, like on the International Space Station, their bodies begin to change in surprising ways. Without the constant pull of gravity, astronauts experience muscle atrophy and bone density loss. The body starts to weaken because it no longer has to fight against gravity to move around. Over time, this can lead to serious health issues, especially on long-duration missions to places like Mars. This is where artificial gravity could make all the difference. But how do we create gravity in space? The key to artificial gravity lies in mimicking the effects of real gravity. One of the most well-known methods is by using centrifugal force. If you've ever been on a spinning amusement park ride and felt pulled toward the edge, you've experienced this force firsthand. The idea is that by rotating a spacecraft or space station, we can create a similar effect. Artificial gravity that pulls astronauts toward the outer edge of the structure. This concept has been around for a long time, and it's often depicted in movies like 2001, A Space Odyssey. In that film, astronauts walk along the curved walls of a giant spinning space station. The centrifugal force generated by the rotation creates the illusion of gravity, allowing them to move around just like they would on Earth. While the idea of rotating space habitats sounds straightforward, the reality is much more complex. To generate artificial gravity that feels like Earth's gravity, the structure would need to rotate at just the right speed. Too slow, and the effect would be weak. Too fast, and the difference in force between the astronauts' heads and feet could make them feel disoriented or even sick. Another challenge is the size of the structure. To make the rotation comfortable for humans, the station would need to be quite large, potentially miles in diameter. Designing and building something of that scale in space would be an enormous engineering challenge, but it's one that scientists are continuing to explore. There are also other methods being considered to create artificial gravity. Some researchers are looking into the possibility of using linear acceleration, where a spacecraft would accelerate in a straight line at a constant speed to create a sense of gravity. But while this is theoretically possible, it would require a tremendous amount of energy and constant acceleration, which poses its own set of challenges. For now, most of the focus remains on rotational artificial gravity as the most feasible option. NASA and other space agencies have conducted experiments to understand how different levels of gravity affect the human body. These studies help researchers design future systems that could one day be implemented in long-duration space missions. The idea of creating artificial gravity is not just about making space travel more comfortable. It's about making it safer and more sustainable for humans. After all, if we're going to explore distant planets or even settle on them, we need to make sure that our bodies can handle the journey and the extended time away from Earth's natural gravity. Isaac Newton's law of universal gravitation is one of the most fundamental principles in physics. It states that every mass attracts every other mass in the universe with a force that's proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. This law laid the foundation for understanding how objects move in space. Newton's discovery showed that gravity wasn't just something that happened on Earth. It was a universal force, governing the motion of planets, stars, and galaxies. This insight was revolutionary at the time, as it connected the physics of the heavens with the physics of everyday life. The law explains why the Earth orbits the Sun and why the Moon orbits the Earth. It also explains why objects fall to the ground when dropped. Gravity, according to Newton, acts on all objects, regardless of size, from a small pebble to the largest planets. What's remarkable about Newton's law is its simplicity. With just a single equation, F equals g times the product of two masses divided by the square of the distance between them, Newton captured the essence of a force that shapes the entire universe. The equation is elegant, yet it has profound implications. Newton's law of gravity was also instrumental in predicting the existence of planets. In fact, by applying the law of gravitation, astronomers were able to discover Neptune. simply by observing the irregularities in Uranus's orbit. These deviations hinted at the presence of another massive object exerting a gravitational pull. Newton's understanding of gravity also paved the way for advances in astronomy and space travel. By calculating the gravitational forces between objects, scientists could determine the trajectories of spacecraft, enabling us to send probes to distant planets and beyond. This knowledge remains crucial to space exploration today, but while Newton's law describes how gravity works, it doesn't explain why gravity exists in the first place. He famously said he could describe the motion of planets, but not the cause of that motion. This mystery would remain unsolved for centuries, until Einstein came along with his theory of general relativity. Nonetheless, Newton's law of gravitation was a monumental leap forward in our understanding of the universe. It provided a framework that would be used for centuries to explain how objects interact through gravitational forces. Even today, we still use Newton's equations in many practical applications. The simplicity of Newton's formula makes it incredibly versatile. It can be used to calculate everything from the gravitational pull between two objects on Earth to the force between two stars millions of light-years apart. Despite the advancements in physics, Newton's law continues to hold up in most scenarios we encounter. One important aspect of the law is the concept of inverse square relationships. This means that as the distance between two objects increases, the gravitational force between them decreases exponentially. Double the distance, and the force is only 1/4 as strong. This principle explains why gravity feels so much weaker between distant objects in space compared to objects on Earth. For instance, the Sun's gravity pulls on the Earth strongly, but objects on the far side of the solar system experience far less of its gravitational influence. Newton's law also helps explain the behavior of tides on Earth. The gravitational pull of the Moon and the Sun causes the water in our oceans to bulge out, creating high and low tides. These tidal forces are a direct consequence of the interaction between Earth and its celestial neighbors. Even though Newton didn't know about black holes, his law of gravitation can be used to explain some of their properties. Black holes have such a strong gravitational pull that not even light can escape. Newton's equations can describe the forces involved, but they don't fully capture the complexities of these extreme objects. Interestingly, Newton's law also implied that gravity is instantaneous, that changes in gravity are felt instantly across any distance. This idea seemed natural at the time, but modern physics would eventually challenge it, showing that gravitational effects travel at the speed of light. Isaac Newton's law of universal gravitation was a turning point in science. It not only explained the motion of objects on Earth and in space, but also introduced the idea that the same rules apply everywhere in the universe. Einstein's theory of general relativity took our understanding of gravity to an entirely new level. Unlike Newton's law, which described gravity as a force, Einstein proposed that gravity is actually the result of the curvature of space-time. Massive objects like planets and stars bend the fabric of space-time, and this bending affects the motion of other objects. Think of space-time as a stretchy sheet. When you place a heavy object on it, the sheet bends around that object. Smaller objects moving near it will follow the curve, which we perceive as the force of gravity. This new perspective on gravity changed how we think about the universe. Rather than being a force acting at a distance, gravity is the result of how space and time themselves are shaped by mass and energy. This shift in understanding was revolutionary. Einstein's theory explained phenomena that Newton's couldn't. For example, it accounted for the slight shift in Mercury's orbit that had puzzled astronomers for years. The bending of space-time by the Sun caused Mercury to move in a way that Newton's laws couldn't fully predict. Another groundbreaking prediction of general relativity was the existence of gravitational waves. These ripples in space-time occur when massive objects, like black holes, collide. Decades after Einstein first predicted them, scientists detected gravitational waves in 2015, confirming a key aspect of his theory. Einstein's equations also led to the prediction of black holes. These are regions of space where the curvature of space-time becomes so extreme that not even light can escape. The existence of black holes was once theoretical, but now we have overwhelming evidence of their presence throughout the universe. Perhaps the most famous example of general relativity in action is the bending of light around massive objects. This effect, known as gravitational lensing, allows us to observe distant galaxies by seeing the light bent by intervening massive objects like clusters of galaxies. One of the most significant implications of general relativity is that time is not constant. The stronger the gravitational field, the slower time moves. This phenomenon, known as time dilation, has been confirmed through experiments and is a critical factor in technologies like GPS. While general relativity applies to massive objects and large distances, its effects can be observed in everyday life too. GPS satellites, for instance, must account for the differences in time caused by the weaker gravitational field in orbit compared to Earth's surface. Without these adjustments, the system would be inaccurate. Einstein's theory also revealed that the universe is not static. It can expand, contract, and evolve over time. This realization led to the concept of the Big Bang, the idea that the universe started from a singular point and has been expanding ever since. One of the most mind-bending predictions of general relativity is the possibility of wormholes. These theoretical shortcuts through space-time could connect distant parts of the universe. While still speculative, the mathematics of general relativity allows for their existence. Although general relativity has passed every experimental test so far, it's not the final word on gravity. It doesn't mesh well with quantum mechanics, the theory that governs the behavior of particles on the smallest scales. This conflict suggests that there's more to uncover about gravity in the future. Einstein's theory also predicted the existence of dark energy, a mysterious force that seems to be driving the accelerated expansion of the universe. Understanding this dark energy is one of the biggest challenges in modern physics. Despite its complexities, general relativity continues to be an essential part of our understanding of the cosmos. It has withstood more than a century of tests and remains a cornerstone of modern physics. Yet, even as we rely on Einstein's insights to explore the universe, new discoveries may one day extend or replace his ideas. Gravity has a profound influence on the motion of all objects with mass. It dictates how planets orbit stars, how moons orbit planets, and even how galaxies move through the cosmos. Essentially, it governs the large-scale structure of the universe. When we think about motion, gravity is what keeps objects in predictable orbits. The Earth, for example, is held in a stable orbit around the Sun due to the Sun's massive gravitational pull. Without gravity, our planet would simply drift off into space. But gravity doesn't just affect celestial bodies. It also plays a key role in everyday motions here on Earth. From the moment we take a step to the way objects fall, gravity is the force that pulls everything down toward the Earth's center. The relationship between gravity and mass is straightforward. The more mass an object has, the stronger its gravitational pull. This is why the Sun, with its enormous mass, has such a powerful gravitational influence on all the planets in our solar system. Even though gravity is a weak force compared to others like electromagnetism, it becomes dominant when large amounts of mass are involved. This is why we feel the effects of Earth's gravity so strongly, even though we can't feel the gravitational pull of smaller objects around us. As objects move under the influence of gravity, their motion follows predictable patterns. These patterns are described by Kepler's laws of planetary motion, which show how planets sweep out equal areas in equal times as they orbit a star. Gravity keeps these motions consistent over time. The pull of gravity also affects the speed of objects in motion. As an object moves closer to a massive body, it accelerates due to the increasing strength of the gravitational field. This acceleration is something we experience every time we drop something, as it speeds up as it falls. Gravity's influence on mass is also key to the concept of weight. While mass is the amount of matter in an object, weight is the force gravity exerts on that mass. On Earth, we experience this force as the familiar sensation of weight. But in space, far from Earth's gravity, that sensation disappears. Objects in orbit around the Earth, such as satellites, are actually in a constant state of freefall. They're moving fast enough horizontally that as they fall, they keep missing the Earth. This balance between motion and gravity is what allows them to stay in orbit. Interestingly, gravity also plays a role in shaping the objects themselves. Over long periods, gravity can cause massive objects like planets and stars to take on a spherical shape. The inward pull of gravity works to distribute mass evenly around a central point. Mass and gravity are intertwined in the process of star formation as well. When enough mass gathers in one place, the gravitational force becomes so strong that it triggers nuclear fusion, leading to the birth of a star. Gravity is the force that starts this process and keeps stars burning for billions of years. The interaction between gravity and mass can also lead to extreme objects like black holes. When a massive star collapses under its own gravity, the mass becomes so concentrated that the gravitational pull becomes inescapable, even for light. These objects warp the motion of anything that comes near them. Gravity not only influences motion, but it also dictates the stability of structures in space. For example, it helps hold galaxies together despite the expansion of the universe. The gravitational pull between all the stars in a galaxy prevents them from drifting apart. The influence of gravity on motion is evident on every scale, from the smallest grains of sand to the largest galaxy clusters. It's the fundamental force that ensures objects with mass move in predictable, often beautiful patterns throughout the universe. Without gravity, mass would lose its ability to organize itself into the structures we see today. Planets, stars, and galaxies wouldn't exist as we know them. The universe would be a vastly different place without the influence of gravity shaping its motions. Real gravity is a natural force that results from the mass of an object, pulling everything toward its center. It's what we experience here on Earth, where the planet's mass creates a gravitational field that pulls us down toward its surface. This pull is constant and affects all objects equally, regardless of their size or composition. Artificial gravity, on the other hand, isn't a true gravitational force. It's a simulation of gravity, typically created using centrifugal force in rotating environments. Instead of mass pulling objects toward a center, the spin creates the sensation of gravity by pushing objects outward, toward the walls of a rotating structure. One of the key differences is how the forces are applied. In real gravity, the force is the same throughout an entire object, whether it's a person, a spacecraft, or a planet. In artificial gravity, the strength of the force can vary depending on the distance from the center of rotation. This variation can cause strange effects. For example, in a spinning space station, the gravity at your feet would be stronger than the gravity at your head. The further away from the center of the rotation, the greater the centrifugal force, which can make movement feel unnatural and disorienting. In real gravity, objects fall straight toward the center of mass. When you drop something on Earth, it follows a predictable path straight down. In artificial gravity, objects don't fall in the same way. Instead, they move in curves influenced by the rotation of the environment, making simple tasks like dropping a pen much more complex. Another major difference is the direction of the force. On Earth, gravity always pulls downward, toward the center of the planet. But in a rotating spacecraft, artificial gravity pulls outward, away from the axis of rotation, toward the walls of the structure, completely changing the way you move and orient yourself. Real gravity also has effects over enormous distances. The Earth's gravity doesn't just affect objects on its surface. It pulls on the moon, influences tides, and even reaches into space to help guide satellites in orbit. Artificial gravity, however, only works within the confines of the rotating system, with no effect beyond the walls of the spacecraft or station. In terms of physical impact, real gravity exerts a constant force on the human body that we've evolved to live with. Artificial gravity, particularly in rotating environments, can feel different. The constant spin can cause nausea, dizziness, or even long-term disorientation if not carefully managed. Real gravity operates based on mass and distance. The larger the object and the closer you are to it, the stronger the gravitational pull. Artificial gravity, by contrast, depends entirely on the speed of rotation and the size of the rotating structure. There's no mass involved, just motion. There's also the issue of maintenance. Real gravity, like that of Earth or a planet, requires no input to keep functioning. It's a natural consequence of mass. Artificial gravity, on the other hand, requires constant energy to maintain the rotation, meaning it could fail if systems break down or power is lost. While real gravity is something we take for granted, artificial gravity would have to be carefully designed for each specific environment. The speed of rotation, the size of the space station, and the needs of the occupants would all have to be factored in to make it as comfortable and functional as possible. Another difference comes down to scale. On Earth, gravity is uniform across vast distances, Artificial gravity, however, only works within a limited space. The moment you leave the rotating environment, you return to weightlessness, making it much more restricted in scope compared to real gravity. Even though artificial gravity can mimic some of the effects of real gravity, it can't replicate everything. For example, the psychological effects of living in a rotating environment could be very different from living in a natural gravitational field, where we've evolved over millions of years. In real gravity, objects naturally gather toward the center of mass, which is why centripetal force is the key to creating artificial gravity in a rotating environment. It's the force that pulls objects toward the center of rotation, preventing them from flying outward. In a rotating spacecraft, this force pushes objects toward the outer walls, creating the sensation of gravity. When a space station spins, the centripetal force generated by the rotation mimics the effect of gravity by pushing everything outward. This outward push acts as a substitute for the downward pull of gravity we feel on Earth. The faster the station spins, the stronger the artificial gravity becomes. The role of centripetal force is to constantly redirect an object's path, keeping it in circular motion rather than allowing it to move in a straight line. Without this force, objects would continue moving in a straight line, flying away from the center. It's this constant redirection that gives rise to artificial gravity. In a rotating habitat, everything feels as if it's being pulled toward the floor, much like how we feel the ground beneath our feet on Earth. But it's important to remember that this is an illusion created by the outward push of the rotation. There's no actual gravitational pull involved. The strength of this artificial gravity depends on two main factors: the speed of rotation and the size of the structure. A larger space station requires a slower spin to generate the same level of gravity, while a smaller structure needs to spin much faster to achieve the same effect. One of the challenges in using centripetal force for artificial gravity is managing the balance between speed and comfort. If a space station spins too fast, it could cause discomfort or even make people feel dizzy. The rotation must be slow enough to feel natural, but fast enough to provide a significant gravitational force. The further you are from the center of rotation, the stronger the force you feel. This means that in a large rotating station, people living near the outer edges would experience stronger artificial gravity than those closer to the center. This variation must be carefully managed in the station's design. Centripetal force doesn't just affect people, it impacts everything inside the rotating environment. Objects will behave differently than they do on Earth, falling outward toward the walls rather than down toward the floor. This changes how people interact with their surroundings, making some everyday tasks more challenging. Another factor to consider is the Coriolis effect, which occurs in rotating environments. As you move within the rotating space, the force you experience can shift, causing objects or even people to move in unexpected directions. This can complicate movement and make the environment feel less intuitive. Even though centripetal force can create the sensation of gravity, it's not identical to real gravity. For example, the force only works while the station is rotating. If the rotation stops, so does the artificial gravity, leaving everything floating weightlessly again. Despite these challenges, centripetal force remains the most feasible method for generating artificial gravity in space. It's the principle behind many proposed designs for future space habitats, from spinning space stations to rotating spacecraft designed for long-duration missions. The use of centripetal force would allow astronauts to live and work in an environment that closely mimics life on Earth. This could reduce the negative effects of long-term exposure to microgravity, like muscle atrophy and bone density loss, making it a crucial technology for deep space exploration. Understanding how centripetal force works is essential for designing functional and safe rotating habitats. Engineers must carefully calculate the speed and size of the station to ensure the artificial gravity feels natural and doesn't create discomfort for the occupants. In addition to providing gravity, the rotating environment could also help with psychological well-being. Living in a space where there's a clear up and down, with objects behaving in familiar ways, could help astronauts feel more grounded, even far from Earth. Ultimately, the concept of using centripetal force for artificial gravity is about creating a livable, sustainable space environment. It's one of the most promising solutions for addressing the challenges of. In a zero-gravity environment, the human body undergoes profound changes. Without the constant pull of Earth's gravity, muscles begin to weaken, and bones lose density. The body no longer has to work as hard to support itself, which leads to rapid physical decline over time. One of the most noticeable effects is muscle atrophy. In the absence of gravity, muscles responsible for posture and movement are no longer needed as much. Astronauts must engage in rigorous exercise routines to combat this, but even then, muscle loss is hard to avoid. Bones are also heavily affected by zero gravity. In normal conditions, bones stay strong through the stresses placed on them by gravity. Without that force, the bones begin to lose minerals, making them weaker and more prone to fractures. Over long periods, astronauts can lose significant amounts of bone mass. The cardiovascular system undergoes changes as well. On Earth, gravity helps pull blood toward the lower parts of the body, but in zero gravity, blood tends to pool in the upper body. This can cause astronauts to experience puffiness in the face and reduce blood flow to the legs, leading to changes in circulation. Over time, these shifts can affect the heart itself. The heart, no longer needing to work as hard to pump blood, can shrink slightly in size. Although the effects are usually reversible once back on Earth, extended time in zero gravity could lead to long-term cardiovascular challenges. Another impact of zero gravity is on the spine. Without the compressive force of gravity, the vertebrae in the spine can expand, causing astronauts to grow slightly taller during their time in space. However, this stretching can also cause back pain and discomfort. Vision is another area affected by zero gravity. Fluid shifts in the body can lead to increased pressure on the eyes, causing changes in vision. Some astronauts experience a condition called spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, where the shape of the eye changes, potentially leading to long-term vision problems. The vestibular system, which controls balance, is also disrupted in space. In zero gravity, the inner ear, which helps us sense orientation, no longer functions as it does on Earth. This can cause astronauts to feel disoriented or experience space motion sickness during the first few days of a mission. The lack of gravity also has psychological effects. Without the familiar sense of up and down, astronauts must rely more on visual and tactile cues to orient themselves. This can take some time to adjust to and may cause cognitive challenges in the early stages of space travel. Sleep can be disrupted in zero gravity as well. On Earth, gravity helps the body maintain a natural rhythm of rest and activity. In space, without that natural force, astronauts often experience difficulty falling asleep and may struggle with maintaining regular sleep patterns. The immune system is not spared either. Studies show that in a zero-gravity environment, the human immune response is weakened. This makes astronauts more susceptible to infections, as their body's ability to fight off disease is compromised. The body's fluid distribution also changes drastically. On Earth, gravity keeps fluids evenly distributed, but in space, fluids tend to accumulate in the upper body. This can cause astronauts to feel bloated or experience congestion in the sinuses, making simple tasks like breathing more challenging. Radiation exposure is another concern in space. Without the protective atmosphere of Earth, astronauts are exposed to higher levels of cosmic radiation, which can increase the risk of cancer and other long-term health issues. Zero gravity itself may not cause this, but the lack of gravity complicates how we mitigate the risk. Over time, all these effects compound, making long-term space travel a significant challenge for human health. While some changes are reversible, others could have lasting impacts, especially on missions that extend for months or years. Addressing these issues is crucial for future missions to Mars and beyond. Understanding how zero gravity affects the body is the first step in designing environments and protocols that can protect astronauts on these long journeys. In space, the absence of gravity leads to significant health challenges, particularly bone density loss and muscle atrophy. These effects occur because the body no longer has to fight against gravity to move and maintain posture. As a result, muscles weaken and bones lose mass at an accelerated rate. Bone density loss happens because bones rely on regular stress and strain to remain strong. On Earth, activities like walking, running, and even standing exert pressure on our bones, keeping them dense and resilient. In microgravity, this constant pressure is gone, leading to a condition known as spaceflight osteopenia. Astronauts can lose up to 1% of their bone mass each month they spend in space. The bones most affected are those that carry the most weight on Earth, such as the hips, spine, and legs. Without gravity's pull, these bones weaken, becoming more prone to fractures over time. This bone loss is concerning not only for long-term space missions, but also for astronauts' health when they return to Earth. After spending months in microgravity, weakened bones may struggle to handle the pressures of Earth's gravity, increasing the risk of injury during everyday activities. Muscle atrophy, or the weakening of muscles, occurs alongside bone loss. Muscles that are used to resisting gravity on Earth, like those in the legs and back, no longer have to work as hard in space. As a result, they shrink and lose strength, even with regular exercise. Astronauts exercise for several hours each day to combat muscle atrophy, but it's not always enough to completely prevent muscle loss. Without the regular resistance provided by gravity, muscles deteriorate, leading to reduced physical endurance and strength. This makes simple movements more difficult over time. The loss of muscle mass can make readapting to Earth's gravity extremely challenging. After long missions, astronauts often find themselves struggling with tasks that were once easy, like standing, walking, or lifting objects. Their muscles need time to regain their former strength. The cardiovascular system is also impacted by muscle atrophy. The heart, which is a muscle itself, doesn't have to pump as hard in space, since the blood doesn't have to fight against gravity. Over time, the heart can weaken, potentially leading to cardiovascular issues once back on Earth. This weakening of the muscles and bones presents significant challenges for longer missions, such as those to Mars. If astronauts arrive at their destination with weakened bones and muscles, they could face serious difficulties performing the physical tasks required to explore and survive on the planet. Rehabilitation after returning to Earth is an essential part of the recovery process. It can take months for astronauts to fully regain their bone density and muscle strength. Even then, some bone loss may be permanent, with long-term consequences for bone health as astronauts age. Researchers are exploring various countermeasures to address these issues. Resistance training, improved nutritional strategies, and pharmaceutical interventions are all being investigated to slow or reverse the effects of bone and muscle loss in space. These approaches are vital for the success of future deep space missions. Bone density loss and muscle atrophy also raise concerns about how future spacefarers will fare on planets with lower gravity than Earth, such as Mars. Although Mars has gravity, it's only about 1/3 as strong as Earth's, which may not be enough to fully counteract these health issues. Artificial gravity, created through rotating spacecraft or stations, is one potential solution. By mimicking the effects of Earth's gravity, artificial gravity could help preserve bone density and muscle mass during long-duration space flights. However, this technology is still in development and presents its. Artificial gravity could offer significant psychological benefits for astronauts on long-duration space missions. In the weightlessness of space, astronauts often feel disoriented without the familiar sense of up and down. Artificial gravity would restore this orientation, helping them feel more grounded, both physically and mentally. One of the major challenges of space travel is the lack of normalcy. Everyday tasks become more complicated without gravity, and even simple actions can feel unnatural. Providing artificial gravity could make the environment feel more like home, easing the psychological strain of living in such an unfamiliar setting. The presence of artificial gravity could also reduce the stress that comes with long-term isolation. On missions that last months or even years, maintaining a sense of routine and normality is essential for mental health. A space station that mimics Earth-like conditions, including gravity, could help astronauts maintain a healthier mental state. Sleep is another area where artificial gravity could have a major impact. In microgravity, astronauts often struggle to establish a consistent sleep schedule. By providing a steady downward pull, artificial gravity could help regulate their circadian rhythms, leading to better rest and improved cognitive function. In a weightless environment, the constant floating sensation can feel disconcerting. Over time, this can contribute to feelings of unease or discomfort. Artificial gravity would offer a familiar physical sensation, allowing astronauts to relax more easily and feel less anxious. Social interactions could also benefit from artificial gravity. With a clear sense of up and down, astronauts may find it easier to relate to one another and maintain eye contact during conversations. This could foster better communication and teamwork, essential components of any space mission. Artificial gravity might help reduce the cognitive load that comes with operating in a weightless environment. In space, even simple movements require more thought, as astronauts must constantly adjust to the lack of gravity. By creating a more Earth-like setting, artificial gravity would free up mental energy for other tasks. The psychological effects of prolonged exposure to microgravity are still being studied, but it's clear that living in such an unusual environment can lead to stress and fatigue. Artificial gravity could mitigate some of these effects, helping astronauts maintain higher levels of focus and productivity. Spatial awareness is another potential benefit. In microgravity, astronauts must constantly adjust to the sensation of floating and the lack of a fixed point of reference. Artificial gravity would restore a sense of direction, making it easier to navigate and organize their environment. Physical exercise, which is already crucial for preventing muscle and bone loss, could feel more natural with artificial gravity. Instead of relying on resistance bands or specialized equipment, astronauts could engage in more familiar exercises like running or weightlifting, which could improve their mental outlook as well as their physical health. The stability provided by artificial gravity could also lead to a greater sense of security. In microgravity, there's always an underlying sense of instability, as objects and people constantly drift. A gravitational pull would anchor astronauts and their belongings, creating a more predictable and controlled environment. This sense of stability could be especially important during emergencies. In high-stress situations, the added challenge of operating in zero gravity could increase anxiety, and artificial gravity would play a critical role in future space station designs. Current space stations, like the International Space Station, operate in microgravity, where astronauts experience a range of physical changes due to the lack of gravity. Artificial gravity could help mitigate many of these negative effects. By simulating gravity, a rotating space station would provide a more Earth-like environment. This would reduce the muscle atrophy and bone density loss that astronauts face during long stays in space. Over time, this could improve the overall health and performance of crew members on extended missions. The constant sense of up and down provided by artificial gravity would make day-to-day activities easier. Simple tasks, like eating, sleeping, and exercising, could feel more natural compared to the challenges of working in a weightless environment. It would also help astronauts maintain their physical coordination. Artificial gravity would also have a psychological impact. The ability to move around normally without constantly floating could improve mental well-being and reduce stress. Astronauts might feel more grounded, quite literally, and this familiarity could help with long-term space living. From a design perspective, creating a rotating station to generate artificial gravity would require careful planning. Engineers would need to calculate the right balance between size and speed to create a comfortable gravity level. The station's rotation would need to be fast enough to generate gravity, but slow enough to avoid disorientation. Larger space stations would be able to rotate more slowly to achieve the same gravitational effect. This would provide a more stable environment, reducing the risk of motion sickness or other issues related to rotation. The size of the station becomes a critical factor in achieving effective and comfortable artificial gravity. In addition to health and comfort, artificial gravity could improve safety. On Earth, gravity helps secure objects, equipment, and even people. In microgravity, everything must be strapped down or tethered. With artificial gravity, things would stay in place naturally, reducing the risk of accidents. Maintaining an artificial gravity environment could also make it easier to design and operate life support systems. Systems for water circulation, air filtration, and waste management could function more efficiently in a gravity-like environment. This would simplify station maintenance and improve the overall living conditions. Food preparation and consumption would be much easier with artificial gravity. In microgravity, liquids and small particles float away, making meals a challenge. With gravity, astronauts could eat more normally without the need for specialized equipment or techniques to keep food from drifting. Exercise routines, critical for maintaining astronaut health in space, would be more effective in artificial gravity. Current methods in microgravity, like resistance bands and treadmills, are designed to mimic the effects of gravity, but having real gravity would make exercise more natural and effective. Artificial gravity could also aid in scientific research. Many experiments conducted in space aim to understand the effects of microgravity. However, having both artificial and zero-gravity environments within a station would allow scientists to compare results and broaden their understanding of how gravity affects various processes. For missions, centrifugal force is an apparent force that comes into play when an object moves in a circular path. As something spins, this force pushes outward from the center of rotation. It's not a true force in the sense of gravity or magnetism, but rather a result of inertia, the tendency of an object to move in a straight line. Imagine a ball tied to a string and swung around in a circle. The ball wants to move in a straight line, but the string pulls it inward, creating a balance that keeps it moving in a circular path. The tension in the string represents the centripetal force pulling inward, while the ball's motion creates the outward push we call centrifugal force. In a rotating space station, centrifugal force is used to simulate gravity. The spinning motion pushes everything outward toward the walls, just like the ball in the example. The faster the station spins, the stronger this outward force becomes, mimicking the sensation of weight. Centrifugal force depends on the speed of rotation and the radius of the circle. In a space station, a larger radius means the station can rotate more slowly to achieve the same effect. This slower rotation reduces discomfort, making the environment more comfortable for astronauts. One of the challenges of using centrifugal force is managing the balance between speed and radius. If the station rotates too quickly, the difference in force felt at different parts of the body, like the head and feet, can cause dizziness or disorientation. This is why larger stations are preferred for generating artificial gravity. Another factor is the need for constant velocity. The station must maintain a steady speed of rotation to keep the centrifugal force consistent. Any changes in speed or sudden movements could disrupt the sensation of gravity and cause unexpected shifts in the force felt by the occupants. In practice, centrifugal force acts perpendicular to the direction of motion. So, in a rotating space station, down isn't toward the center of the station, but outward toward the walls. This creates a unique environment where the walls become the floor, and astronauts can walk around as if they were on Earth. It's important to remember that centrifugal force doesn't pull objects. It's the result of inertia pushing them outward as they try to continue moving in a straight line. This distinction is key when designing artificial gravity systems, as the force depends on the motion of the station, not the mass of the objects inside it. The strength of the centrifugal force is proportional to the square of the speed of rotation. Doubling the speed of a station's spin doesn't just double the force, it actually increases it 4 times. This is why a careful balance must be struck to ensure the force is strong enough to simulate gravity, but not so strong that it becomes uncomfortable. This outward force also affects how objects behave. Items placed near the center of rotation will feel less centrifugal force, while those farther out will experience a stronger push. This could influence how rooms and equipment are arranged within a rotating habitat. In a space station, centrifugal force would be most effective at the outer edge, where the spin creates the strongest push. The further away you are from the center, the more closely the artificial gravity will feel like Earth's gravity. This allows for different levels of simulated gravity depending on where you are in the structure. In everyday terms, centrifugal force can be felt when riding in a car that takes a sharp turn. You feel pushed to the side because your body wants to keep moving straight while the car changes direction. In a rotating space station, a similar outward push happens, but it mimics gravity instead of just a sudden shift. Centrifugal force can be used to keep liquids and objects stable in artificial gravity environments. In microgravity, liquids float. The concept of a rotating space station is built around the idea of creating artificial gravity. By spinning the station, centrifugal force pushes objects toward the outer walls, simulating the feeling of gravity. This would allow astronauts to walk, work, and live more naturally, compared to the weightlessness they experience in traditional space stations. The outer ring of the station would act as the living and working area. As the station spins, this ring becomes the floor, where astronauts could move about as they would on Earth. The further from the center, the stronger the simulated gravity, making the outer edge the most ideal for daily activities. Designing a rotating space station involves balancing size and speed. A larger station can rotate more slowly, while still providing sufficient artificial gravity. Slow rotation reduces the risk of disorientation and motion sickness, making the environment more comfortable for long-term habitation. The central hub of the station would have little to no gravity. As you move closer to the center, the effects of centrifugal force diminish, meaning astronauts could experience a range of gravity levels within a single structure. This variation could be used for different tasks, from research to exercise. The idea of a rotating space station isn't new. Concepts like the Stanford Torus and O'Neill cylinder have been proposed since the 1970s. These designs envision massive habitats where thousands of people could live and work, all under the influence of artificial gravity generated by rotation. In these designs, the rotation creates a stable and consistent gravity-like force. This would help solve many of the health issues associated with long-term spaceflight, like muscle atrophy and bone loss. By replicating Earth's gravity, astronauts would maintain their physical strength and well-being. Creating a rotating space station would require advanced engineering. The structure needs to be strong enough to withstand the stresses of constant rotation, while also providing a stable living environment. Every detail, from the materials used to the design of the interior, must account for the unique challenges of rotation. One of the key advantages of a rotating station is its potential for long-duration missions. With artificial gravity, astronauts could stay in space for months or even years without the severe physical deterioration caused by weightlessness. This would make missions to Mars and beyond much more feasible. A rotating station would also provide a more familiar environment for astronauts. The sensation of gravity could improve mental health by reducing the disorientation and stress that comes with living in microgravity. The psychological benefits of having a clear up and down could be significant for long-term space crews. In addition to health and psychological benefits, a rotating space station would also improve the functionality of daily activities. Tasks like cooking, cleaning, and sleeping would become easier when gravity keeps objects in place. This could make life in space feel more like life on Earth. Rotating space stations would likely be modular in design. Different sections could serve different purposes, with some areas rotating to create artificial gravity while others remain in microgravity for scientific research. This flexibility would allow astronauts to adapt their environment to their needs. The rotational speed of the station is crucial. If it spins too quickly, the differences in gravitational force between an astronaut's head and feet could cause discomfort or disorientation. Engineers must carefully calculate the optimal speed to ensure comfort without sacrificing the benefits of artificial gravity. Rotating space stations also come with challenges. Maintaining a steady rotation, balancing forces, and managing energy are all complex tasks. Any disruption to the station's spin could affect the artificial gravity, leading to sudden changes that might impact the crew. As space exploration advances, the rotating space station concept remains. The Stanford Torus and the O'Neill cylinder are two of the most famous space station designs that utilize rotation to create artificial gravity. Both were conceived during the 1970s, when space colonization was a growing area of interest among scientists and engineers. These concepts aim to support human life in space for extended periods by providing a stable, Earth-like environment. The Stanford Torus, designed by NASA and Stanford University, is shaped like a massive ring. The station would rotate once per minute, using centrifugal force to create artificial gravity along its outer rim. This would allow people to walk and live on the inside of the ring just as they do on Earth. The design of the Torus envisioned a structure about 1.8 kilometers in diameter, with a large, hollow interior. The central hub, which would have little or no gravity, would connect to the ring through spokes. These spokes would serve as passageways and also provide access to the microgravity research areas in the hub. The O'Neill cylinder, proposed by physicist Gerard K. O'Neill, took the concept of a rotating habitat even further. Instead of a ring, this design involved two massive cylinders, each several kilometers long. These cylinders would rotate in opposite directions, providing artificial gravity on their inner surfaces while stabilizing each other's motion. The size of the O'Neill cylinder would allow for vast interior landscapes. The inside of each cylinder would feature large, Earth-like environments, including cities, farmland, and forests. The rotation of the cylinder would simulate gravity, creating a comfortable living environment for potentially millions of people. Both designs address the need for artificial gravity as a way to support human health in space. The Stanford Torus and the O'Neill cylinder were not just technical concepts, but also visions of future space colonies where people could live, work, and raise families. They aimed to replicate Earth's conditions as closely as possible. One of the strengths of these designs was their potential for scalability. As humanity's presence in space grew, these rotating habitats could expand to house larger populations. With enough resources and energy, they could become self-sustaining colonies far from Earth, supporting long-term space exploration and even settlement. Both the torus and the cylinder would require extensive materials, many of which would need to be sourced from space itself. O'Neill's design, in particular, envisioned using lunar materials to build the habitat, reducing the need to transport heavy supplies from Earth. This would make the construction of such massive structures more feasible. One of the unique features of the O'Neill cylinder was its ability to simulate different climates and environments. With its vast size, the interior could support a wide range of ecosystems, allowing for diverse living conditions and agricultural production. This would help make the habitat self-sufficient in terms of food production. The Stanford Torus, while smaller than the O'Neill cylinder, offered a more focused design. Its ring structure provided a straightforward way to generate gravity, and its compact size made it easier to envision in the near future. The central hub could serve as a docking point for spacecraft, allowing easy transportation of goods and people. Both designs, however, faced significant engineering challenges. Constructing such enormous rotating habitats in space would require new technologies and massive amounts of energy. The logistics of building, launching, and maintaining these structures remain one of the biggest obstacles to their realization. In addition to technical hurdles, the psychological and social aspects of living in a closed, rotating environment would need to be addressed. The design sought to create familiar landscapes, but questions. Building a rotating space station that generates artificial gravity presents numerous challenges, especially when it comes to size, speed, and engineering. The larger the structure, the slower it needs to spin to create comfortable gravity levels, but large structures are far more complex and expensive to build. Striking the right balance between these factors is crucial for any future design. One of the biggest issues with size is the sheer amount of material required. A space station large enough to house people comfortably and generate gravity needs to be enormous. This demands not only significant resources, but also the capability to launch and assemble those materials in space, far from Earth's gravitational pull. Speed is another critical factor. To create artificial gravity, the station must spin at the right rate. If the station spins too slowly, the gravity won't be strong enough to mimic Earth's conditions. On the other hand, if it spins too fast, it could cause dizziness or discomfort, due to the difference in centrifugal force felt across the body. Engineering a system that maintains this delicate balance of speed and size involves cutting-edge technology. Every part of the station must be designed to withstand the forces generated by constant rotation. The structural integrity of the habitat, as well as the safety of its occupants, depends on flawless engineering. Another challenge lies in managing the forces acting on the space station. As it rotates, the materials used in its construction must endure constant stress. The outward centrifugal force would exert pressure on the station's frame, meaning engineers need to design a structure that can handle these forces without failing. Energy consumption is also a major consideration. Keeping the station spinning at the right speed requires a continuous supply of energy. Solar panels, nuclear reactors, or other futuristic energy sources would need to be integrated into the station's design to ensure it remains operational over time. Creating a stable environment for long-term habitation is key. As the station spins, the centrifugal force isn't uniform everywhere. The gravity experienced on the outer edges would be stronger than in the center, which could lead to strange sensations or physical discomfort if not properly managed. This requires precise calculations and careful planning. Maintenance in such an environment would pose significant challenges. In space, repairing and maintaining a rotating structure is far more complex than fixing a stationary one. Engineers would need to develop new tools and methods to handle these tasks safely and effectively in a low-gravity or spinning environment. The size of the station also affects how people experience gravity. In a small station, the difference between the gravity at your feet and at your head could be noticeable, leading to disorientation. Larger stations reduce this effect, but their construction and energy needs become much more demanding. Managing life support systems becomes more complicated in a rotating station. Air circulation, water systems, and waste disposal must all function within the constraints of artificial gravity. These systems, which operate smoothly under Earth's gravity, would need significant adaptation for a rotating habitat. Communication and transportation within the station would also be different. Moving between areas of varying gravity levels, from the center to the outer edge, could create logistical challenges. Elevators, corridors, and other means of transport must be designed to handle these shifts without causing confusion or discomfort. Another consideration is the long-term impact of living in artificial gravity. While the goal is to replicate, rotation-based artificial gravity offers a range of benefits, particularly for long-term space missions. By simulating Earth-like conditions, it helps mitigate the health risks associated with living in microgravity. This means astronauts can maintain muscle mass, bone density, and overall physical health much more effectively. In a rotating environment, the constant sensation of gravity would allow for more natural movement. Everyday tasks like walking, eating, and sleeping would become easier compared to the challenges of floating in a microgravity setting. This familiar sensation could also reduce the mental strain of living in space. Artificial gravity would also allow for better health outcomes in the cardiovascular system. On Earth, gravity helps circulate blood throughout the body, something that doesn't happen in space. By recreating this force, rotation-based gravity could prevent some of the issues astronauts face, like reduced heart function and fluid buildup in the upper body. Exercise, a critical part of space health management, would become more effective in artificial gravity. Rather than relying on resistance bands or treadmills, astronauts could perform weight-bearing exercises just as they would on Earth. This would improve muscle and bone preservation over long-duration missions. Psychologically, the experience of gravity helps with orientation and balance. In microgravity, astronauts must constantly adjust to floating, which can lead to disorientation and stress. With rotation-based artificial gravity, they would have a clear sense of direction and physical stability, providing a more grounded experience. Maintaining a normal sleep cycle could also be easier. In microgravity, the body's internal clock can become disrupted due to the lack of natural day-night cycles and the sensation of weightlessness. With artificial gravity, the body would experience a more familiar physical environment, which could help regulate sleep patterns. Another advantage is the ability to use regular tools and technology. Many systems and devices are designed to function under gravity, and using them in space can be tricky. With artificial gravity, astronauts would have fewer adjustments to make when operating equipment or performing repairs. Rotation-based gravity would improve food handling as well. In microgravity, liquids and small particles float freely, making meals a challenge. In a gravity-simulating environment, astronauts could prepare and eat food in a way that feels more normal, reducing complications and improving morale. The use of artificial gravity could extend to medical procedures as well. Performing surgery or other medical interventions in microgravity is extremely difficult. With rotation-based gravity, doctors would have a more stable environment for providing medical care, making space stations and spacecraft safer for long-term missions. Artificial gravity could also lead to better hygiene and waste management. In microgravity, managing fluids and cleaning up can be much more complicated. With a gravitational force pulling things downward, these everyday processes would become more manageable, keeping living conditions more sanitary. The long-term sustainability of space habitats would also benefit from rotation-based gravity. Plants and animals, essential for life support systems like food production and oxygen generation, rely on gravity to function properly. By simulating gravity, space stations could better support ecosystems and agricultural systems. In terms of mental health, having a consistent gravitational environment would likely reduce the psychological stress that comes with living in an unnatural state. The simple act of feeling weight beneath your feet could help astronauts feel more connected to their surroundings, reducing feelings of isolation or disorientation. Artificial gravity would allow for more efficient space tourism. As interest in space travel grows, Creating environments where people can live comfortably is critical. Rotation-based gravity could make these experiences more accessible and enjoyable, as future space tourists would not need to adapt to the disorienting effects of microgravity. Another benefit is the ability to train astronauts for planetary missions. Since planets like Mars have some gravity, training in artificial gravity would prepare astronauts for the physical challenges of walking, working, and surviving on another planet's surface. Overall, the adoption of rotation-based artificial gravity would greatly enhance the feasibility and comfort of long-duration space missions. It addresses many of the physical, mental, and operational challenges that astronauts face in space, making it a vital component of future exploration. Using constant acceleration to simulate gravity is another approach for creating an Earth-like environment in space. Instead of relying on rotation, this method uses the forward motion of a spacecraft to generate a continuous force that mimics the effects of gravity. As the spacecraft accelerates, everything inside experiences a push in the opposite direction, similar to how gravity pulls objects down on Earth. This concept works because of a principle known as equivalence, which states that the effects of acceleration can feel the same as the effects of gravity. When a spacecraft accelerates at a steady rate, the force acting on objects inside would give them weight, creating a gravitational effect along the axis of acceleration. To generate artificial gravity using this method, the spacecraft would need to accelerate constantly at a specific rate, typically around 9.8 meters per second squared. This is the same acceleration caused by gravity on Earth, meaning that astronauts inside the spacecraft would feel as though they were experiencing normal gravity. One of the major advantages of this approach is that it would eliminate some of the complications associated with rotating habitats, such as the Coriolis effect, or varying gravity levels at different points in the structure. Constant acceleration provides a uniform gravitational force throughout the spacecraft. However, maintaining constant acceleration over long periods presents significant challenges. The spacecraft would need an enormous amount of energy to keep accelerating continuously, especially on missions lasting months or years. Current propulsion systems are not yet capable of sustaining such acceleration for extended durations. Deceleration would also be necessary once the spacecraft approaches its destination. Just as the acceleration creates a forward gravitational pull, slowing down would reverse the force, pulling objects in the opposite direction. This requires careful planning to avoid discomfort or confusion for the crew. Another issue with constant acceleration is the impact on fuel consumption. To sustain acceleration, the spacecraft would need a propulsion system that can operate efficiently for long periods. This would require advanced propulsion technologies, such as nuclear or ion engines, that are still in development. In addition, using constant acceleration would mean that any interruptions, such as engine malfunctions or power shortages, would result in the sudden loss of artificial gravity. Unlike rotating habitats, where gravity is maintained through spin, this method depends entirely on the continuous operation of the propulsion system. The direction of gravity in a constantly accelerating spacecraft would also differ from what we're used to on Earth. Instead of being pulled toward the floor, astronauts would feel the force in the direction opposite to the ship's acceleration. This means that down would be toward the back of the ship, not toward the center of a rotating habitat. One possible application of constant acceleration would be for interplanetary travel, such as missions to Mars. By accelerating for half the journey and then decelerating for the second half, astronauts could experience artificial gravity during the entire trip. This would reduce the physical strain of long-term weightlessness. Although promising in theory, the practical challenges of constant acceleration are significant. Achieving and sustaining the necessary thrust over long distances would require breakthroughs in propulsion technology, energy generation, and spacecraft design. Until these advancements are made, constant acceleration remains a theoretical solution. In terms of health benefits, constant acceleration would provide the same advantages as rotation-based gravity, such as maintaining muscle mass and bone density. Astronauts would be able to move, eat, sleep, and exercise in an environment that closely mimics Earth's gravity. One of the benefits of this method is its potential to create a more natural living environment without the need for large rotating structures. The simplicity of the design could reduce the engineering complexities associated with spinning habitats, allowing for more straightforward. Linear acceleration as a method for simulating gravity has its share of pros and cons. One of the key advantages is the uniformity of the gravitational effect it provides. Unlike rotating habitats, where gravity can vary depending on position, linear acceleration creates a consistent force throughout the entire spacecraft. This consistency could make life aboard the spacecraft feel more natural. There would be no strange variations in gravity between different sections, and astronauts wouldn't have to deal with the disorienting effects of rotation, such as the Coriolis effect, which can impact balance and movement. Another major benefit is the potential for simplicity in spacecraft design. With linear acceleration, there's no need for complex rotating sections or mechanisms. The spacecraft can be designed in a more traditional, streamlined shape, reducing engineering challenges and possibly lowering costs. However, one of the most significant drawbacks is the enormous energy requirement. To maintain constant acceleration for any meaningful duration, the spacecraft would need a propulsion system that can provide a sustained, steady thrust. This requires a vast amount of fuel or advanced propulsion technologies that are not yet fully developed. Fuel consumption is another serious limitation. Current propulsion systems would burn through fuel too quickly to sustain constant acceleration for the long periods required for deep space missions. Without significant advances in fuel efficiency or propulsion technology, this method may not be viable for extended journeys. Additionally, deceleration presents its own set of challenges. For every period of acceleration, there must be an equal period of deceleration to bring the spacecraft to a stop. This complicates mission planning and could result in prolonged phases where the crew feels gravity in the opposite direction, which might be disorienting. Another con is the vulnerability of the system to interruptions. Any engine malfunction or power outage would immediately halt the acceleration, and with it, the simulated gravity. Unlike rotation-based gravity, which continues as long as the structure is spinning, linear acceleration depends entirely on a functioning propulsion system. There's also the issue of space efficiency. In a constantly accelerating spacecraft, the direction of gravity would be along the length of the ship, meaning that the design of living quarters, workspaces, and storage would have to accommodate this orientation. This could lead to awkward layouts or inefficient use of space. The physical strain of continuous acceleration and deceleration on the human body is another potential downside. Although the acceleration would simulate gravity, the constant shift in speed could still cause discomfort, particularly during the transitions between acceleration and deceleration phases. One of the advantages, though, is that linear acceleration avoids the need for large rotating structures, which could reduce overall spacecraft mass. This would lower the engineering demands and allow for a more compact, lightweight design compared to the massive space habitats required for rotation-based gravity. Another con is that achieving Earth-like gravity would require a very specific rate of acceleration, roughly 9.8 meters per second squared. If the spacecraft cannot consistently maintain this rate, the gravity experienced by the crew might be weaker, which could diminish the health benefits of artificial gravity. Communication and coordination with ground control might also become more complicated during constant acceleration. The continual movement could introduce new challenges for maintaining stable communication links, especially as the spacecraft gains or loses velocity over time. On the other hand, this method could be more scalable than rotating habitats. It could be used for smaller spacecraft or even individual modules without the need for large, expansive structures. This flexibility could make it an attractive option for certain types of missions, particularly those focused on shorter trips or specific tasks. Psychologically, linear acceleration could help astronauts feel more connected to familiar sensations of gravity, the continuous force pulling them. Using linear acceleration to simulate gravity in space travel could offer a more natural environment for astronauts during long-duration missions. By gradually accelerating a spacecraft to a specific speed, the crew would feel a constant force pushing them toward the back of the ship, mimicking the sensation of gravity. This approach would make space travel more comfortable and help mitigate the physical effects of weightlessness. In practice, a spacecraft designed for linear acceleration would need powerful engines capable of providing consistent thrust. The spacecraft would accelerate during the first half of the journey, creating a steady gravitational force. Once halfway to its destination, it would begin decelerating, which would again provide a gravitational pull, but in the opposite direction. This method could be particularly useful for interplanetary missions such as trips to Mars. With the right propulsion system, astronauts could spend the entire trip experiencing a form of gravity, rather than floating in microgravity for months. This would help them stay healthier and more prepared for life on the Martian surface. To achieve this, spacecraft would need highly efficient propulsion systems, possibly using advanced nuclear or ion engines. These systems would allow for sustained acceleration without burning through too much fuel. The development of these technologies is crucial for making this concept a reality. During the acceleration phase, all onboard systems would need to be adapted for the gravitational force created by the thrust. Living quarters, workspaces, and storage areas would have to be designed to accommodate the direction of the simulated gravity, which would act along the length of the spacecraft. One potential challenge would be adjusting to the changing direction of gravity when the spacecraft switches from acceleration to deceleration. During this transition, the force would shift, and astronauts would need to reorient themselves to the new down direction, which could cause temporary disorientation. This method of simulating gravity could also have implications for landing on other planets. A spacecraft using constant acceleration could decelerate smoothly as it approaches a planetary surface, making for a controlled and gradual descent. This would reduce the stress on both the spacecraft and its crew. Using linear acceleration for gravity simulation might also extend to space stations or even smaller modules that shuttle between Earth and a larger habitat. These vessels could maintain artificial gravity during travel, ensuring that astronauts arrive at their destination in better physical condition than if they had spent the entire journey in zero gravity. In addition to its health benefits, the sensation of gravity could improve daily activities during long voyages. Astronauts would be able to perform tasks like eating, sleeping, and exercising more naturally, reducing the cognitive and physical strain that comes with living in microgravity. Navigation and piloting systems would need to be adapted to account for the continuous change in velocity. Maintaining stable communication with Earth and adjusting the trajectory of the spacecraft while under constant acceleration would require advanced software and real-time monitoring. One advantage of this method is that it could provide a consistent gravitational experience throughout the journey, unlike rotating habitats, where the gravity varies depending on location. This uniformity could simplify the design of the spacecraft and improve overall comfort for the crew. The use of constant acceleration could also be integrated into cargo missions. Automated ships carrying supplies could utilize this method, ensuring that materials arrive at their destination without being subjected to the damaging effects of weightlessness. Linear acceleration would also affect how experiments are conducted in space. Scientists could design studies that rely on artificial gravity, which could offer insights into how biological systems function under conditions closer to those found on Earth. This would expand the scope of research possible in space. This approach might also open up new opportunities for space tourism. Providing travelers with an Earth-like gravitational experience during the journey could make space travel more accessible and enjoyable for non-astronauts, reducing the risks and discomfort. The potential for future spacecraft design, incorporating constant acceleration, offers intriguing possibilities. With the right advancements, spacecraft could become more efficient, allowing for faster travel times to distant planets and beyond. The use of constant acceleration could significantly reduce the time spent in microgravity, which is one of the main concerns for long-duration missions. One possible design would involve long, streamlined ships built to withstand the continuous force of acceleration. These ships would be optimized for efficiency, with propulsion systems capable of providing a steady thrust over long periods. This would create a consistent artificial gravity throughout the interior of the spacecraft. The interior design of these ships would also need to adapt to constant acceleration. Living quarters, workspaces, and recreational areas would likely be oriented along the length of the ship, so the acceleration feels like gravity pulling toward the back of the craft. This layout would ensure that astronauts experience a natural sense of down throughout their journey. For missions to Mars or other planets, spacecraft using constant acceleration could shorten travel times dramatically. By accelerating for half the journey and decelerating for the second half, astronauts could reach their destination more quickly than with current propulsion methods. This would reduce exposure to the harsh environment of space, such as radiation. Future designs might incorporate hybrid propulsion systems. These would combine chemical rockets for initial thrust with advanced propulsion like ion drives or nuclear propulsion for long-term acceleration. Such systems would balance the need for quick escape from Earth's gravity with the sustained push needed for interplanetary travel. Materials science would play a crucial role in the construction of these future spacecraft. Lightweight, durable materials that can handle both the stresses of acceleration and the vacuum of space would be essential. Advanced composites or even materials developed in microgravity environments could be key to making these designs a reality. In addition to propulsion, life support systems would need to evolve. A constant acceleration environment would provide benefits for health, but these systems would have to be robust enough to function efficiently under continuous stress. Air, water, and food systems would need to operate seamlessly in this new design paradigm. Spacecraft using constant acceleration could also be modular. Different sections of the ship could detach or reconfigure based on mission needs, providing flexibility for different phases of the journey. This adaptability would make spacecraft more versatile, capable of handling both deep space exploration and planetary landings. Energy storage and distribution systems would need to be reimagined as well. Constant acceleration demands a continuous supply of power, not just for propulsion, but for all onboard systems. Future spacecraft designs might rely on next-generation batteries, compact nuclear reactors, or other long-term energy solutions. Artificial intelligence could play a significant role in managing these complex systems. Automated controls would optimize propulsion, energy use, and life support, ensuring everything runs smoothly over the course of the mission. This would reduce the workload on human crews and increase the overall efficiency of the spacecraft. Radiation shielding would need to be advanced in future designs as well. With faster travel times, astronauts might be less exposed to cosmic radiation, but deep space remains hazardous. Innovative shielding materials or magnetic fields could be incorporated into the spacecraft's structure to protect the crew. Future spacecraft designs might also include centrifugal modules. These sections would rotate to simulate gravity when the ship isn't accelerating, providing flexibility for different mission phases. The ability to switch between constant acceleration and artificial gravity could make long-term space travel more comfortable and sustainable. Safety systems would be a top priority in any new spacecraft design. In the event of an engine failure or power loss, the ship would need backup systems capable of maintaining acceleration or at least a safe environment for the crew. Redundancy in propulsion and life support would be critical to the success of these missions. The design process for these future spacecraft would likely involve extensive testing in low Earth orbit. Small-scale prototypes could demonstrate the viability of constant acceleration propulsion, while also testing new materials and systems in the real conditions of space. This phased approach would gradually lead to larger, more capable ships. The potential for constant acceleration in future spacecraft design points toward a new era of space exploration. With faster travel, safer environments, and more efficient systems, humanity could push deeper into the solar system than ever before, bringing us closer to a future where long-term space travel is not only possible, but sustainable. Electromagnetism, one of the four fundamental forces, offers a different approach to simulating gravity in space. Unlike centrifugal force or constant acceleration, this method would rely on magnetic fields to generate the effects of gravity. It's an intriguing concept, though not without its challenges. Magnetism is already used in many technologies, from MRI machines to maglev trains, which levitate using powerful magnetic fields. The idea of using these fields to simulate gravity in a spacecraft involves creating a magnetic pull strong enough to hold objects down, similar to how gravity works on Earth. In theory, if a spacecraft could generate a powerful enough magnetic field, it could attract metallic objects and keep them anchored to the floor. This would provide a similar experience to gravity, at least for objects made of or containing certain materials that respond to magnetism. One challenge with this approach is that not all materials are magnetic. Human bodies, for example, are not naturally magnetic, which means we don't respond directly to magnetic fields. For this to work, astronauts might need to wear specially designed suits with magnetic properties to keep them grounded. Another possibility is using superconductors. These materials exhibit strong electromagnetic properties when cooled to extremely low temperatures, and they could be used to create powerful fields. However, maintaining such low temperatures in space would require significant energy and specialized equipment. The strength of the magnetic fields needed to simulate gravity is another concern. Powerful magnetic fields can interfere with electronic equipment and even pose health risks. Engineers would need to carefully design systems to shield sensitive instruments and protect astronauts from potential side effects. One benefit of using electromagnetism is that it doesn't rely on physical movement, like rotating a spacecraft. This could simplify the design of future habitats by reducing the need for large, spinning structures or the constant fuel consumption required for linear acceleration. Electromagnetism could also be turned on and off as needed, providing flexibility in when and where artificial gravity is used. This would allow for more precise control over the environment inside the spacecraft, adjusting gravity levels for specific tasks or scientific experiments. Additionally, the ability to fine-tune magnetic fields could make it easier to simulate varying levels of gravity, such as what astronauts would experience on the Moon or Mars. This could be valuable for training or preparing for missions to these destinations, giving crews a chance to adapt to lower gravity environments. However, producing large-scale magnetic fields powerful enough to simulate gravity requires a significant amount of energy. Current power sources in space, like solar panels or small reactors, might not be able to generate the required electricity, limiting the feasibility of this approach without major advances in energy technology. Another challenge is the uneven distribution of magnetic forces. Gravity on Earth pulls uniformly across objects, but magnetic forces can vary depending on the distance from the source and the material being affected. This could lead to uneven experiences of gravity in different parts of the spacecraft. There's also the potential for long-term exposure to strong magnetic fields to affect human health. While we regularly encounter magnetic fields in everyday life, such as in medical devices, the levels required for gravity simulation in space would likely be much higher. Extensive research would be needed to understand the potential biological effects. Despite these challenges, electromagnetism offers an interesting alternative to more traditional methods of creating artificial gravity. It represents a shift away from mechanical systems like rotating habitats, and instead explores the possibilities of harnessing natural forces in new ways. One area where this approach could shine is in specialized environments, such as research labs aboard space stations. Here, the ability to create gravity on demand for specific experiments could lead to new scientific discoveries without needing to modify the entire spacecraft's structure. The technology to fully realize electromagnetism-based artificial gravity may be years or even decades away, but the potential for a simpler, energy-efficient solution makes it an area worth exploring further as we continue to expand humanity's reach into space. Magnetic levitation, or maglev, has already found practical applications here on Earth. It's used in transportation, particularly with high-speed trains, where magnets are used to lift and propel the trains forward without friction. This concept of reducing contact and friction could have implications for space travel. Researchers are exploring how magnetic levitation could be applied to space environments, particularly in the context of artificial gravity. By using strong magnetic fields, it might be possible to levitate objects or even people, simulating the experience of gravity without needing a rotating station or constant acceleration. One area of focus is the development of superconducting materials, which can generate powerful magnetic fields with little to no energy loss. These materials, once cooled to extremely low temperatures, allow electricity to flow without resistance, making them highly efficient for creating the necessary fields for levitation. However, using superconductors in space presents its own set of challenges. Maintaining the extremely low temperatures required for superconductivity would demand advanced cooling systems, which would increase both energy consumption and the complexity of spacecraft design. Despite these obstacles, experiments are being conducted to test the feasibility of magnetic levitation in space. Some researchers are studying how maglev technology could be integrated into space stations or future habitats to create zones of artificial gravity where needed, offering flexibility for different parts of the spacecraft. In addition to artificial gravity, magnetic levitation could be used for docking spacecraft. By using magnetic fields to guide and stabilize docking maneuvers, this technology could reduce wear and tear on ships and stations, while making the process more precise and less dependent on manual control. Some studies are also looking into the potential for magnetic fields to help with propulsion. While this is different from gravity simulation, it shows that the research into magnetic technologies in space is opening up a variety of possibilities, including those beyond the original applications. The current research is still in its early stages, and there's much we don't know about how magnetic fields will behave in the microgravity of space. Scientists are working to understand how to control and manipulate these fields effectively in a weightless environment. Another challenge is power. Magnetic levitation requires a significant amount of energy to maintain strong enough fields to lift or anchor objects, let alone to simulate gravity across an entire habitat. Developing more efficient power sources will be key to making this technology practical for space exploration. Some research is also focused on the miniaturization of magnetic levitation systems. By reducing the size and power requirements of maglev technology, it could be more easily integrated into spacecraft and space stations. Smaller, more efficient systems would be more adaptable and less costly to deploy. Magnetic levitation in space could have applications beyond just artificial gravity. It could be used for storing and moving cargo, reducing the need for mechanical systems like conveyor belts. This would allow for more efficient and versatile space station designs. Despite the excitement around this research, it's clear that significant technological breakthroughs are still required before magnetic levitation can be widely applied in space environments. These include advancements in materials science, energy generation, and the control of magnetic fields. Collaboration between space agencies, universities, and private companies is vital for moving this research forward. As interest in deep space exploration grows, funding and focus on magnetic technologies could lead to rapid advancements in the coming decades. As we look to the future of space travel, magnetic levitation might become one of the core technologies that enable long-term human habitation in space. It's a flexible tool with many potential applications, not just for creating artificial gravity, but for a range of space operations. The idea that we might someday use magnets to create gravity in space seems far-fetched today. But with ongoing research and development, what seems improbable now may become standard in the spacecraft of the future. The concept of creating gravity through magnetic fields is still largely theoretical, but it opens up some intriguing possibilities. Magnetic fields, in theory, could be used to simulate gravitational pull by exerting force on specific materials. This would require a deep understanding of how to manipulate magnetic forces in ways we haven't yet mastered. One approach would involve creating highly concentrated magnetic fields around a spacecraft or habitat. These fields could act on magnetic or magnetizable materials, pulling them toward the floor in a manner that mimics the force of gravity. However, controlling such powerful fields on a large scale would be a significant technical challenge. The main obstacle is that human bodies aren't inherently magnetic, meaning that the effects of magnetic gravity wouldn't be felt directly by the crew. To address this, astronauts might need to wear magnetic suits, designed with materials that respond to these fields, allowing them to stay grounded inside the spacecraft. Alternatively, spacecraft could be designed with a magnetic infrastructure that pulls at metallic objects or other responsive materials, creating localized areas where magnetic forces mimic gravity. This approach would likely be used in specific zones, rather than throughout the entire spacecraft. One of the theoretical benefits of magnetic field-based gravity is that it could be turned on or off as needed. Unlike mechanical systems that rely on rotation or constant acceleration, magnetic gravity could be adjusted dynamically to meet the needs of the mission or even individual tasks. A magnetic gravity system could also be scaled down for smaller spacecraft or modules. Instead of designing massive rotating structures, magnetic fields could be localized to create gravity in key areas like sleeping quarters or workstations. This would allow for more flexible and adaptable space habitats. However, the challenge remains in creating fields strong enough to have the desired effect. Current technology doesn't yet allow for the generation of magnetic fields on the scale required to simulate Earth-like gravity across large spaces. The fields needed to produce such force would likely interfere with electronic systems and potentially even human health. There's also the issue of energy. Maintaining a strong magnetic field requires a continuous supply of power, and generating fields strong enough to mimic gravity could consume more energy than current spacecraft systems can handle. New methods of energy production and storage would need to be developed to support such systems. The idea of using magnetic fields to simulate gravity has applications beyond human habitation. For example, this technology could be used in manufacturing or scientific experiments conducted in space, where precise control of gravity-like forces might be necessary. This could open new doors for research in space-based environments. Researchers are also exploring how magnetic fields could be combined with other forms of artificial gravity, like rotational or linear acceleration. Hybrid systems could offer the benefits of multiple approaches, providing flexibility in designing spacecraft suited for various mission types. Magnetic field-based gravity also brings up questions about long-term exposure to strong fields. We know that magnetic fields can affect certain biological processes, and sustained exposure to the intense fields needed for artificial gravity could have unforeseen consequences. Much more research would be needed to assess these potential health risks. Another theoretical possibility is the use of electromagnetic propulsion systems to generate both movement and gravity-like effects. These systems could leverage magnetic fields to not only push the spacecraft through space but also create zones of artificial gravity for the crew. However, this concept remains speculative. If magnetic gravity could be achieved, it might allow for lighter spacecraft designs. Without the need for large rotating sections or fuel-heavy propulsion systems, spacecraft could be built smaller and more efficiently. This could lower the cost of missions and make deep space exploration more accessible. Ultimately, while creating gravity through magnetic fields remains a long shot, the theoretical potential is compelling. It represents an entirely new way of thinking about artificial gravity, one that could revolutionize how we design and inhabit spacecraft in the future. Magnetic fields may one day play a key role in how we create sustainable living environments in space. But for now, the technology remains largely in the realm of theory. Yet, with continued research and advancements in energy and material science, it's a concept that shouldn't be dismissed. The limitations and energy requirements of creating artificial gravity through magnetic fields present significant obstacles. One of the most pressing challenges is the sheer amount of energy needed to generate magnetic fields strong enough to simulate gravity. Current space power systems, such as solar panels, wouldn't be able to sustain these fields over long periods. Producing powerful magnetic fields demands continuous, stable energy output, and most spacecraft are designed to operate with limited energy reserves. This means that a magnetic gravity system would likely require new forms of power generation, such as compact nuclear reactors or highly efficient energy storage solutions. Maintaining such fields across a large space, like a full spacecraft or space station, would further increase energy demands. The larger the area you want to simulate gravity in, the more energy is required to keep the magnetic forces stable and effective. This scaling issue becomes a critical limitation for long-term or large-scale missions. Another limitation is the effect that strong magnetic fields can have on other systems. Many onboard electronics and scientific instruments in a spacecraft are sensitive to magnetic interference. These fields could disrupt or damage the delicate equipment needed for navigation, communication, and research. Additionally, the health risks of long-term exposure to strong magnetic fields are not yet fully understood. While we experience weak magnetic fields on Earth, the fields required to simulate gravity in space would be far more intense. There's concern that exposure at these levels could have unknown effects on human biology over extended missions. Magnetic fields don't affect all materials equally. This means that using magnetic fields to simulate gravity would likely only work with certain objects, particularly those that are responsive to magnetism. For anything else, like most everyday materials and human bodies, alternative solutions would be required, complicating the overall system. The uneven nature of magnetic forces presents another challenge. Unlike real gravity, which pulls equally across all points of an object, magnetic forces can vary depending on the distance from the source of the field. This could lead to inconsistent experiences of gravity within the spacecraft, making movement and daily activities unpredictable. Implementing a magnetic gravity system would also require significant advancements in material science. We'd need materials that can either amplify magnetic fields or respond in predictable ways to them. Without these materials, the system's efficiency would be limited, further increasing energy consumption and reducing practicality. Even with breakthroughs in materials, managing the power distribution for a magnetic gravity system would be complex. You'd need to ensure a stable power flow to maintain the magnetic fields, and any disruption, such as a power failure, could result in the sudden loss of artificial gravity, which could be dangerous for the crew. The infrastructure required to house and maintain the equipment needed for magnetic gravity would take up valuable space in the spacecraft. Large magnets or superconducting systems would add significant weight, and the more weight a spacecraft has, the more energy it requires for propulsion and maintaining orbit. Cooling systems are another factor. Many superconducting materials, which are often proposed for these kinds of technologies, need to be kept at extremely low temperatures to function. This would require advanced refrigeration systems, which themselves would consume a lot of energy and increase the spacecraft's overall complexity. One potential solution could involve intermittent use of magnetic fields, activating them only when needed for certain tasks. However, this would limit the ability to create a consistent gravitational environment, which is essential for health and comfort during long missions. The cost of developing and deploying these magnetic systems would also be significant. Not only would the technology need to be invented and tested, but it would also need to be integrated into spacecraft in a way that ensures reliability. The financial and engineering investment required might be a major barrier. Finally, there's the issue of scalability. While magnetic gravity might work in small, controlled environments, scaling it up to support entire habitats or space stations presents numerous challenges. Until we can develop the necessary energy infrastructure and understand the long-term impacts of such systems, this remains a distant possibility. Overall, while the idea of using magnetic fields to simulate gravity is compelling, the limitations and energy requirements mean that it's unlikely to be a solution in the near future without major technological advancements. Scaling magnetic gravity systems to work on a large scale in space presents enormous challenges. While the concept may work in small, controlled environments, applying it to a space station or a large spacecraft requires solutions that are not yet within reach. The energy required to maintain powerful magnetic fields across an entire habitat would be immense. One issue with large-scale implementation is the variability of magnetic forces over distance. Unlike gravity, which is uniform, magnetic fields lose strength quickly as you move away from the source. This would make it difficult to create consistent gravity throughout a large space. To address this, the spacecraft or space station would need an extensive network of magnetic generators placed strategically throughout the structure. However, the complexity of installing and maintaining such a system could make it impractical, especially for long-duration missions or permanent habitats. The weight and size of the equipment necessary to generate magnetic fields on a large scale would also be a major limitation. Large magnets or superconducting systems would take up considerable space and add to the overall mass of the spacecraft. Every additional kilogram increases the cost and energy required for launch and propulsion. Another issue is shielding. In a large-scale magnetic gravity system, ensuring that the strong magnetic fields don't interfere with sensitive electronics would be crucial. This would require additional systems and materials designed to block or divert magnetic fields, adding yet more complexity. If the goal is to simulate gravity over large areas, the energy consumption would be a critical factor. Current space technology doesn't have the capacity to generate or store enough energy to support magnetic fields strong enough to act like gravity across a whole spacecraft or station. One possible workaround could involve only creating magnetic gravity in specific zones. For example, certain areas of the station, such as sleeping quarters or workout zones, could be equipped with localized magnetic fields. However, this would limit the benefits of gravity to only those areas, leaving the rest of the spacecraft in microgravity. Building a large-scale system would also require new advances in materials science. Superconducting materials that can function at higher temperatures or more efficiently might make large-scale magnetic gravity feasible. But until these materials are developed, the technological gap remains too large. Another consideration is how such a system would impact crew health. While magnetic fields can simulate gravity for certain objects, we don't yet fully understand how long-term exposure to strong magnetic fields would affect the human body. Large-scale systems would need to be tested extensively to ensure they're safe for long-term use. Space agencies and private companies would need to invest heavily in research and development to make large-scale magnetic gravity systems a reality. The cost of building and launching the necessary infrastructure would be enormous, and without clear advantages over other methods, it may be difficult to justify that expense. Additionally, even if we could generate magnetic gravity on a large scale, the control of these fields would be tricky. Balancing the intensity and direction of the fields across different parts of the station would require precise engineering, and any fluctuation in power could disrupt the entire system. Large-scale magnetic systems also faced logistical challenges during assembly and maintenance. Constructing such a system in space would be a massive undertaking, requiring advanced robotics or spacewalking astronauts to ensure the magnets and generators are positioned correctly. Another concern is how magnetic gravity would interact with other systems in the spacecraft, such as propulsion, life support, and communications. Large-scale magnets could interfere with these essential functions, creating risks that would need to be carefully managed. While smaller test systems could be feasible in the near future, the jump to a large-scale deployment remains speculative. Magnetic gravity may prove effective in niche applications or in specific parts of a spacecraft, but the full implementation across an entire station could be decades away. For now, large-scale magnetic gravity systems are an exciting but distant possibility. They offer an interesting alternative to traditional methods of artificial gravity, but the technological and energy challenges mean they are not yet practical for future space exploration on a broad scale. Increasing mass to create gravity is a concept rooted in how natural gravity works. On Earth, the planet's mass creates the gravitational force that pulls objects toward its center. In space, the idea would be to add mass to a spacecraft or space station to generate a similar gravitational pull. But the feasibility of this approach presents significant challenges. To create gravity similar to Earth's, an enormous amount of mass would be required. This is due to the fact that gravity is directly proportional to the mass of an object. The larger the mass, the stronger the gravitational pull. For a spacecraft, this would mean adding an extraordinary amount of weight, something far beyond current technological capabilities. One of the biggest obstacles is the sheer scale of mass needed. A space station would need to be as massive as a small moon, or even larger to produce any significant gravitational pull. This would require materials that simply can't be launched from Earth in practical quantities with current technology. Another challenge is how to distribute this mass. Even if it were possible to increase the mass of a spacecraft significantly, that mass would need to be evenly distributed to create uniform gravity. Otherwise, the gravitational pull would vary across different parts of the station, leading to uneven and unpredictable effects. The energy required to move a spacecraft with such massive weight would also be a major hurdle. The heavier the station, the more energy it takes to move, maintain orbit, or even launch. This added weight would make deep space missions incredibly costly, both in terms of energy and resources. Additionally, increasing mass artificially means adding materials, which raises concerns about where these materials would come from. Mining asteroids or moons for resources could be a solution, but even with those possibilities, transporting the necessary mass would be an overwhelming logistical challenge. In terms of construction, a station designed to generate gravity through mass would need to be built in space. This adds another layer of complexity, requiring space-based infrastructure and robotics capable of assembling such massive structures. The timeline and cost for such a project would be immense. The long-term stability of a high-mass structure in orbit is another factor to consider. The gravitational forces exerted by the structure itself could create unintended effects on nearby objects, like satellites or other spacecraft. Careful planning and constant adjustments would be necessary to maintain balance. There's also the issue of safety. A large, high-mass structure could become hazardous if anything goes wrong. If the mass were to shift or if structural integrity were compromised, it could lead to catastrophic failure, risking the lives of anyone on board. One theoretical solution is to create mass using advanced materials, perhaps even exotic matter, that could generate gravitational forces without requiring physical bulk. But these materials are still purely hypothetical, and the technology to create or harness them doesn't yet exist. Some scientists have proposed using dense materials like lead or other heavy elements to increase mass without needing a physically larger structure. While this could help reduce the size of the station, it still wouldn't solve the problem of how to move or maintain such a heavy object in space. Artificial mass generation might also be explored, though it's currently far from feasible. This concept would involve creating mass through energy manipulation, but the physics behind this idea remain speculative. No known method allows us to create or alter mass in a way that could solve the problem of generating gravity. Even if we could create enough mass to generate gravity, the environmental effects on the spacecraft would need to be closely monitored. Gravitational forces exert stress on structures, so designing a station that could withstand continuous gravitational pull over long periods would be another engineering challenge. The cost of increasing mass to create gravity would be prohibitive with current technology. The materials, energy, and logistics required would far exceed the budgets of. To create gravity comparable to what we experience on Earth, the mass required for a space station would be astronomical. Gravity is directly proportional to mass, meaning that to produce even a fraction of Earth's gravitational pull, the station would need to contain an immense amount of material. Calculating exactly how much mass is needed quickly reveals how difficult this approach would be. For context, the mass of Earth is approximately 5.97 x 10^24 kilograms. Even a small fraction of that mass would still involve an unfathomable amount of material. To create 1% of Earth's gravity, a space station would need to contain billions of tons of mass, far beyond what we could realistically launch or assemble. The Moon, which exerts about 16% of Earth's gravity, has a mass of 7.35 x 10^22 kilograms. A space station aiming to replicate even a portion of lunar gravity would still need to approach this scale, making the construction of such a station an overwhelming task. There's simply no feasible way to launch that much material into space with current technology. To get an idea of how much mass would be required in practical terms, imagine needing to launch thousands of fully loaded cargo ships into space. The fuel, logistics, and infrastructure needed to manage this operation would be staggering. The International Space Station, by comparison, only weighs about 420 tons, a mere fraction of what would be needed for significant artificial gravity. This highlights the limits of our current capabilities. Even using denser materials, which would help reduce the overall volume of the space station, wouldn't solve the mass issue. Lead, one of the densest materials, would still require enormous amounts to create enough gravitational pull for a practical space station. The sheer size of the structure needed to support such mass also poses a challenge. A station capable of holding and distributing such weight evenly would need to be vast, likely the size of a small moon. Designing and constructing this in space would require advancements in both materials science and construction technologies. Another factor is the distribution of mass. Simply placing a large amount of material in one spot wouldn't create a uniform gravitational field. The mass would need to be spread out evenly around the station to ensure that the gravity felt inside is consistent and predictable, much like how gravity on Earth pulls uniformly toward the center. Additionally, adding mass increases the gravitational pull not just within the station but around it as well. This could create complications for nearby satellites, spacecraft, or other objects in space, as they'd be drawn toward the station's gravitational field. Managing this would add another layer of complexity to the design. Current propulsion technology couldn't handle such weight. Moving or adjusting the orbit of a structure with billions of tons of mass would require propulsion systems far more powerful than anything we have today. This would further complicate the station's ability to navigate through space or maintain its position. Sourcing the material is another significant hurdle. To build a station with that much mass, we'd likely need to mine resources from other planets, moons, or asteroids. While this has been proposed as a future method for space construction, the logistics of mining, transporting, and assembling such vast quantities of material are still far from being solved. The environmental and engineering stresses on the structure itself would be enormous. A space station housing this much mass would need to be designed to withstand the intense forces exerted by the material itself. The structure would have to balance the weight while remaining stable in orbit, which introduces a host of design challenges. One potential way to reduce the required mass is to focus on simulating gravity in specific parts of the station rather than the whole thing. If only certain areas, like sleeping quarters or workstations, require gravity, the total mass needed could be reduced. But this still wouldn't solve the larger problem of sourcing and moving that mass. Another theoretical solution could involve using dark matter or exotic materials, which might have properties that allow for high mass with less physical bulk. But dark matter remains theoretical, and no known materials can yet offer the necessary properties to make this idea feasible. In conclusion, the amount of mass required to create meaningful artificial gravity is far beyond what we can currently manage. The energy, logistics, and engineering required to move such mass into space make this approach nearly impossible with today's technology. Even in the distant future, it may remain more of a theoretical concept than a practical solution. Creating mass artificially, or adding mass to a spacecraft to generate gravity, comes with a high energy cost. The process of moving or assembling enough material to generate gravity, whether through mining or manufacturing, would require enormous amounts of energy. Even transporting mass from one location to another in space presents significant energy challenges. The primary issue is that mass, in any form, is heavy. Whether it's transported from Earth or mined from asteroids, it takes energy to lift and move that mass. Rockets and spacecraft consume fuel based on weight, meaning the more mass we need to transport, the more energy and fuel are required. If we were to consider creating mass through processes like nuclear fusion or some other advanced technology, the energy costs would be even higher. Generating mass from raw energy, according to Einstein's famous equation, E=mc2, would require energy on a scale far beyond what our current technology can provide. Even if we had the ability to mine materials in space, the energy required to extract, process, and transport those materials would still be vast. Mining on asteroids or moons would require entire operations, including machinery, habitats for miners, and transportation systems, all of which need energy to function. The costs aren't just limited to fuel. The energy required to construct and maintain a large, high-mass structure would also need to be factored in. Powering life support systems, maintaining the station's orbit, and regulating temperature in such a massive structure would further increase energy demands. Once the mass is in place, the energy required to keep it in orbit must also be considered. Spacecraft are constantly at risk of being pulled by gravitational forces, and maintaining a stable orbit for a large mass would demand constant adjustments, further driving up energy costs. Even innovations in space-based energy generation, like solar power, wouldn't provide enough to sustain such massive operations. While solar panels work well for smaller, energy-efficient systems, they wouldn't be sufficient to generate the amount of energy needed to create or manage large amounts of mass. The need for energy-efficient propulsion would be crucial. Current propulsion technologies, such as chemical rockets or ion thrusters, aren't efficient enough to move large masses over long distances in space. New propulsion systems, perhaps powered by nuclear energy or something more advanced, would be necessary. Another factor to consider is the energy required for construction in space. If large amounts of mass are being assembled, the construction process itself would require tools and machines capable of operating in a low-gravity environment, all of which would need energy to function. The cost of maintaining artificial gravity through mass would extend beyond just the initial creation or transportation. Over time, the system would need continuous power for stabilization, internal repairs, and counteracting any shifts in mass that might affect the structure's balance. Energy storage becomes another problem. Systems that are capable of generating or moving large amounts of mass would need to store significant amounts of energy for use during missions. Current battery technology isn't capable of storing the necessary energy for such massive, sustained operations. If we rely on futuristic energy sources like antimatter or fusion, the energy costs might be reduced in theory, but we are far from having the technology needed to utilize these energy sources on a large scale. For now, the concept of using advanced energy systems to create mass is purely speculative. Finally, the environmental cost of using vast amounts of energy in space must be considered. Space missions already leave a significant footprint in terms of fuel consumption and energy use, and the creation of mass on this scale could multiply that impact dramatically. Until we develop energy-efficient methods for mass creation and transportation, the concept remains impractical. Even if we solve the technological hurdles, the energy cost alone makes the idea of creating mass to simulate gravity one of the most challenging paths forward. Overall, the energy required to create and manage mass in space would likely exceed what current and foreseeable technologies can handle, making this approach to artificial gravity highly energy-intensive and not feasible with current capabilities. Scaling mass for spacecraft presents a complex set of challenges that go beyond simply transporting large amounts of material. The more mass you add to a spacecraft, the more energy it takes to launch, maintain, and maneuver. This creates a cascading effect where every additional kilogram increases the overall difficulty of the mission. One of the first challenges is the immense amount of fuel needed. A spacecraft's fuel requirements grow exponentially with added mass, as more fuel is required to lift and propel that mass through space. This leads to a situation where most of the spacecraft's weight becomes dedicated to fuel, limiting the space available for the crew and equipment. In addition to fuel, structural integrity becomes a critical concern. A spacecraft designed to carry a significantly larger mass must be engineered to handle the increased stress on its frame. This would require stronger materials, which in turn would add even more weight, compounding the issue. Then there's the problem of assembling such a massive structure in space. It's highly unlikely that such a spacecraft could be constructed and launched from Earth in one piece. Instead, it would need to be built in orbit, which brings in the challenge of transporting parts, assembling them, and ensuring everything works perfectly in the harsh conditions of space. Another challenge is orbital stability. The more mass a spacecraft has, the more susceptible it becomes to gravitational forces from nearby objects like planets and moons. This means that keeping the spacecraft in a stable orbit would require continuous adjustments, draining energy and fuel reserves. Managing life support systems for a spacecraft with significant mass would also be more complex. With a larger crew and more resources on board, these systems would need to scale up accordingly. This would require more energy, more space, and more redundancy to ensure that all essential systems remain operational throughout the mission. Thermal regulation is another concern. Larger spacecraft generate more heat, and without an atmosphere to help dissipate that heat, maintaining a stable internal temperature becomes more difficult. Heat management systems would need to be scaled up to handle the additional mass and energy consumption. Communication systems would also need to be adapted for larger spacecraft. The more massive a vessel, the more challenging it becomes to maintain reliable communication across all areas, especially over long distances. This would require more powerful transmitters, which in turn increase energy demands. Navigation in space becomes increasingly difficult as mass scales up. Heavier spacecraft are less responsive to small course corrections, requiring more powerful thrusters and more fuel to make even minor adjustments in trajectory. This could lead to delays or complications during critical phases of a mission, such as planetary approach or landing. The logistics of resupply and repair would also be more complicated. A larger spacecraft would require more frequent resupply missions, which are costly and resource-intensive. If something breaks or malfunctions, repairs on such a large scale could be difficult to manage in deep space without dedicated facilities or spare parts. One of the major concerns is the cost. Scaling up mass means scaling up the financial burden as well. Every additional component, fuel source, and system adds to the overall expense of the mission. In many cases, the cost of increasing mass may outweigh the benefits, making it an inefficient approach. Environmental impacts of scaling mass are another factor to consider. Larger spacecraft require more launches, more fuel, and leave a greater environmental footprint. While space exploration is important, there's a growing focus on minimizing its impact on Earth's environment, which becomes harder to balance with larger missions. Transporting mass to distant locations, such as Mars or beyond, presents even greater challenges. The further a spacecraft travels, the more fuel and energy it needs to carry that mass. This means planning missions with extra fuel or finding ways to harvest resources in space, both of which are still beyond current technology. Artificial gravity created by mass would also affect onboard activities. Heavy mass concentrated in one area could create imbalances, affecting how people and objects move inside the spacecraft. Designing the layout to ensure uniform gravity would be an engineering challenge. Finally, safety risks increase with more mass. A more massive spacecraft is more difficult to control in emergencies, and the consequences of malfunctions or accidents become far more serious. Theoretical concepts in future technology offer some potential solutions to the challenges of mass and gravity in space. One idea involves manipulating gravity itself through advanced understanding of quantum mechanics or the nature of space-time. Although far from reality, the ability to control gravity could revolutionize space travel. Exotic matter, a hypothetical material with unusual properties, has been suggested as a way to generate gravity without requiring immense mass. If discovered or created, this material could simulate gravitational forces in small, lightweight structures. However, no known technology or material currently behaves this way. Antimatter is another theoretical concept that could impact future space travel. While it wouldn't create gravity directly, antimatter propulsion could generate the enormous amounts of energy needed to simulate gravity or move larger masses efficiently through space. Antimatter, however, is extremely difficult and expensive to produce in significant quantities. Some scientists propose harnessing dark matter, which makes up a significant portion of the universe's mass, yet remains invisible and undetectable. If we could learn to interact with or control dark matter, it might provide a way to increase the effective mass of a spacecraft without physically adding more material. Artificial gravity could also be explored through new forms of propulsion. Concepts like warp drives or space-time manipulation involve bending or altering the fabric of space itself, which might create gravitational effects as a byproduct. These ideas are speculative, but they show how future physics could offer solutions we can't yet fully comprehend. Nanotechnology might also play a role in future spacecraft design. Materials engineered at the atomic level could offer incredible strength and durability while remaining lightweight. These advanced materials could help reduce the need for mass while maintaining the integrity of large structures in space. Another theoretical concept involves energy fields that could simulate gravity. Instead of using mass, these fields would exert a gravitational-like force over specific areas of a spacecraft. It's unclear how such fields would work or how much energy they would require, but the concept holds potential for reducing the need for physical mass. Space elevators, while not directly related to generating gravity, could help with the logistics of transporting mass into orbit. If we can build a stable connection between Earth and space, the cost and energy requirements for moving materials into orbit could drop significantly, making large-scale construction projects more feasible. Fusion power is another future technology that could drastically change space travel. Fusion reactors could provide immense amounts of energy, potentially enough to support large, mass-heavy spacecraft or to power advanced gravity simulation technologies. While still in development, fusion could be the key to unlocking more ambitious missions. Energy harvesting in space, such as collecting energy from the sun through advanced solar arrays or from space itself through theoretical methods, could help fuel future spacecraft. If energy becomes abundant, it might be possible to support the intense energy demands of mass-based gravity systems. Another emerging field is 3D printing in space. This technology could allow astronauts to build massive structures on-site, using materials gathered from moons or asteroids. If scaled up, 3D printing could solve some of the logistical challenges of transporting mass from Earth, reducing costs and energy use. Artificial intelligence and robotics will likely be crucial to managing future spacecraft systems. These technologies could handle complex tasks, like maintaining life support, optimizing energy use, and repairing structures. With AI assistance, even large and complex spacecraft could operate with minimal human intervention. A more speculative idea involves quantum computing, which could revolutionize the way we solve problems related to mass and energy. By processing massive amounts of data quickly, quantum computers might help us find new, more efficient ways to generate artificial gravity or move mass through space. Looking further into the future, it's possible that human biological enhancement could reduce the need for gravity altogether. Genetic engineering or biomechanical augmentation might allow astronauts to adapt to life in zero gravity, reducing or eliminating the need for artificial gravity systems. Ultimately, while many of these theoretical concepts remain speculative, the rapid pace of technological advancement means that solutions to today's challenges could emerge sooner than we think. Artificial gravity has been a staple of science fiction for decades, appearing in countless films and books as a way to make space travel more relatable. In these stories, artificial gravity is often treated as a solved problem, with spacecraft and space stations simulating Earth-like conditions effortlessly. This makes it easier to focus on the adventure rather than the technical details of life in space. One of the earliest examples comes from the 1968 film 2001: A Space Odyssey. In the movie, the rotating space station and the spacecraft Discovery 1 use centrifugal force to create artificial gravity. The iconic rotating set design visually represents this concept, showing how future space travelers might live and work with gravity in space. In Star Trek, artificial gravity is simply a given on board starships. The crew moves about as if they were on Earth, thanks to invisible gravity generators. There's little explanation as to how it works, but it allows the show to focus on exploration and human interactions rather than the mechanics of weightlessness. The Expanse, a more recent science fiction series, takes a more realistic approach. Artificial gravity is achieved through the use of rotating sections of spacecraft or by thrusting continuously, creating a form of gravity through constant acceleration. This closer attention to scientific accuracy grounds the show's portrayal of space travel in plausible technologies. In Interstellar, directed by Christopher Nolan, artificial gravity is created by rotating massive space habitats. The film's depiction of centrifugal force mimics real-world physics, showing that, at least in theory, humans could live in rotating stations that simulate gravity while traveling vast distances through space. Books have also explored the concept in various ways. In Arthur C. Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama, a massive cylindrical spaceship rotates to create artificial gravity inside. This rotation provides a practical solution for long-term space habitation, with characters living on the inside surface of the spinning cylinder. Isaac Asimov's Foundation. Series treats artificial gravity as a routine part of interstellar travel. Ships in Asimov's universe are equipped with gravity control, making space journeys feel as comfortable as life on a planet. The ease with which gravity is manipulated in these stories reflects a future where the technology is ubiquitous and unquestioned. In Ender's Game. By Orson Scott Card, artificial gravity plays a critical role in the battle school, a training facility for young soldiers. The story uses the absence and manipulation of gravity to explore how humans might adapt to fighting in space, with characters learning to move and strategize in environments where gravity is not constant. James S. A. Corey's The Expanse novels delve deeply into the implications of artificial gravity, particularly the health impacts on people who spend their lives in lower gravity environments, like the asteroid belt. The series shows how gravity, or the lack thereof, can shape entire cultures and societies. In Gravity, the 2013 film starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, the absence of artificial gravity creates a more realistic portrayal of space, emphasizing the challenges astronauts face when things go wrong in a weightless environment. While not a story about artificial gravity, its absence is felt keenly in the survival narrative. Science fiction often skips over the technical details of how artificial gravity works. In Star Wars, ships like the Millennium Falcon and the Death Star have artificial gravity, but there's no mention of how it's generated. This allows the focus to remain on the story's action and drama, rather than on explaining technology. In Frank Herbert's Dune, space travel involves massive ships, but artificial gravity is simply part of the background. It's a universe where advanced technology has long surpassed the need to explain how gravity is controlled, reflecting the novel's focus on politics, religion, and ecology rather than hard science. Even in video games like Mass Effect, artificial gravity is assumed to be a standard feature of spaceships. Players move through starships as if they were on solid ground, making it easier to engage with the game's complex narratives without constantly reminding the audience of the challenges of life in. The portrayals of artificial gravity in science fiction are often more convenient than realistic. While the idea of rotating space stations to simulate gravity through centrifugal force is grounded in real physics, most other depictions rely on technology that doesn't yet exist. In many cases, artificial gravity is simply treated as a given, without any explanation. Rotating habitats, as seen in 2001, A Space Odyssey or The Expanse, are one of the more plausible concepts. Centrifugal force can create a gravitational effect, but the station needs to be large enough and rotate at just the right speed to avoid discomfort or dizziness. Smaller, faster spinning habitats could cause issues like motion sickness or a noticeable difference in force between the head and feet. In Star Trek and Star Wars, gravity seems to be generated by some sort of mysterious force field or energy. No explanation is given for how these systems work, and they appear to operate without consuming vast amounts of energy. In reality, generating gravity artificially, especially without rotation, would likely require enormous amounts of power. Shows like The Expanse use the concept of constant acceleration to create gravity, which is based on solid scientific principles. By accelerating at a steady rate, a spacecraft could simulate gravity, but this requires continuous propulsion, something our current space technology cannot sustain over long distances. The energy demands for such systems would be immense. In many other stories, such as Star Wars or Mass Effect, artificial gravity is just a background feature that allows characters to move and interact normally. There's no mention of the massive infrastructure that would likely be required to maintain gravity on ships, which makes these portrayals more fantasy than science. The idea of artificial gravity generators, like those seen in Star Trek, is highly speculative. There is no known method of manipulating gravitational fields in this way, and if such technology were possible, it would require a deep understanding of gravity that science has yet to reach. For now, gravity manipulation remains in the realm of science fiction. In films like Interstellar, the rotating space stations represent one of the most realistic approaches to artificial gravity, but the scale of the stations is far larger than anything we've ever built. Constructing such massive habitats in space would require technologies and resources that are currently beyond our reach. When it comes to the health effects of artificial gravity, most science fiction glosses over the details. In reality, transitioning from microgravity to artificial gravity, especially if it's created by constant acceleration or rotation, could have significant effects on the human body, including disorientation, nausea, and even long-term changes in muscle and bone density. Another unrealistic aspect of artificial gravity in science fiction is how it's maintained with little to no ongoing maintenance. In reality, any system designed to generate gravity artificially, especially through large-scale rotation or constant propulsion, would require regular adjustments and significant energy input to keep functioning properly. The lack of explanation for how artificial gravity works in most science fiction is both a storytelling tool and a shortcut. It allows writers and filmmakers to focus on the plot without having to address the complexities of zero gravity or the enormous challenges of creating gravity in space. While some stories, like The Expanse, show the limitations of artificial gravity, particularly the high cost in terms of energy and engineering, others bypass these challenges entirely. In Star Wars, for example, even small ships seem to have perfect artificial gravity, which would be highly improbable based on our current understanding of physics. Even the idea of turning gravity on and off at will, as seen in Ender's Game, is not realistic with our current understanding of how gravity works. Gravity is a fundamental force, and manipulating it at will would require a breakthrough in physics that we are nowhere near achieving. The use of gravity plating or fields, common in many science fiction series, is highly speculative and not based on any known scientific principles. While it's an exciting concept, it falls squarely in the realm of fantasy. Realistically, artificial gravity systems would need to rely on rotation or acceleration, both of which are energy-intensive and complex to implement. Overall, while science fiction has given us many fascinating depictions of artificial gravity, most are not realistic based on current scientific knowledge. Many of these portrayals serve more as narrative tools than accurate representations of future space travel, but they do inspire us to think about what might be possible with future advancements. Science fiction has long influenced the development of real-world technology. Many of the ideas we see today in modern space travel were first explored in the pages of novels or on the big screen. Visionary writers and filmmakers have inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and inventors. One of the most famous examples is the communicator from Star Trek. This handheld device closely resembles the mobile phonies that became ubiquitous decades later. Though the technology behind it was unknown at the time, the concept sparked the imagination of future innovators. Artificial intelligence, another staple of sci-fi, has influenced advancements in robotics and machine learning. The autonomous systems featured in films like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Blade Runner laid the groundwork for how we envision robots interacting with humans in the real world. Today, AI is rapidly evolving, shaping industries far beyond science fiction. The idea of space stations, first popularized in books and films, became a reality with the construction of the International Space Station. Concepts like long-term living in space were initially speculative, but science fiction helped normalize the idea of humans spending extended periods in orbit, making it easier to turn into reality. Even the concept of space travel itself owes much to science fiction. Writers like Jules Verne and H.G. Wells wrote about voyages to the moon long before rockets were capable of such feats. Their stories fueled public interest in space exploration and inspired the engineers who would later make those dreams come true. One clear example is the influence of Star Wars on space technology. While the film series focuses on fantasy elements like the Force, it also depicted believable, functional space travel and droids, pushing people to think about what's possible. Robotics companies have since designed robots that can perform a range of tasks in space. Science fiction has also had an impact on how we think about human survival in space. Concepts of life support systems, space habitats, and closed-loop ecosystems, seen in stories like The Martian, are now critical areas of research for long-term missions to Mars and beyond. Fictional stories have set the stage for practical, real-world challenges. Even Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, has credited science fiction as a major influence on his vision for space travel. From the sleek designs of SpaceX spacecraft to the goal of colonizing Mars, many of Musk's ideas seem to draw directly from the sci-fi worlds he grew up reading about. The idea of artificial gravity, so common in science fiction, has led researchers to seriously consider how to simulate gravity in space. Although we haven't yet achieved the gravity plating or gravity wells seen in fiction, the pursuit of solutions like rotating habitats continues, inspired by fictional portrayals. Sci-fi has also influenced the development of propulsion technologies. Stories about faster-than-light travel, such as warp drives and hyperspace jumps, have motivated scientists to explore new ways to travel farther and faster in space. Concepts like ion propulsion and solar sails, while not as fast as their fictional counterparts, are rooted in the same visionary thinking. Touchscreen technology, another staple of modern life, was featured prominently in sci-fi long before it became a reality. Films like Minority Report showcased characters interacting with screens through gestures, foreshadowing the development of touchscreen interfaces that we now use every day on our smartphones and tablets. Medical advancements, such as diagnostic beds and robotic surgery systems, were also inspired by science fiction. In Star Trek, the crew used devices to instantly diagnose and treat medical issues. Today, innovations like remote robotic surgery and advanced medical imaging bring us closer to those fictional technologies. Space tourism, once the stuff of speculative fiction, is now becoming a reality, with companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic offering suborbital flights for civilians. The dream of commercial space travel, explored in stories for decades, is slowly being realized, driven by the same visionary spirit that inspired those tales. The influence of science fiction extends to more than just technology. It shapes our culture and our sense of what's possible. It encourages people to imagine futures that might seem out of reach, only to later inspire the innovations that bring those futures to life. Ultimately, science fiction's role in shaping real-world technology is a testament to the power of imagination. By exploring what's possible in stories, we unlock new ways to think about the world and the universe, pushing the boundaries of science and technology. In Star Trek, artificial gravity is a standard feature on all starships, from small shuttles to massive space stations. It's a technology that allows the crew to walk around and live as if they were on Earth, no matter where they are in the galaxy. However, the show never explains how this gravity technology actually works, leaving it in the realm of fiction. In reality, we don't have the ability to manipulate gravity the way it's portrayed in Star Trek. Gravity is a fundamental force of nature, and while we understand how it works, we don't have a way to generate it artificially without using mass or rotation. The idea of gravity plating or fields, as shown in the series, remains purely speculative. Star Trek presents gravity control as a form of energy field, generated by advanced technology and seamlessly integrated into the ship. The idea is that these fields can be turned on and off at will, creating gravity wherever it's needed. In practice, we have no known way to produce such a field. Manipulating gravity would require breakthroughs in physics that we haven't yet achieved. One major difference between the show's depiction and real science is the energy cost. In Star Trek, artificial gravity seems to operate without draining significant resources. In reality, if we could generate gravity, the energy requirements would likely be immense. Maintaining gravity for an entire starship would consume a large portion of the ship's power. The rotating space station concept, like the ones seen in other science fiction films, is much closer to real science than Star Trek's gravity technology. Centrifugal force through rotation is a known and tested method of simulating gravity. While less elegant than Star Trek's invisible systems, it's a solution that doesn't rely on future breakthroughs. Real-world efforts to create artificial gravity are based on either rotating habitats or constant acceleration, as seen in some realistic sci-fi. These approaches are grounded in our current understanding of physics, but they come with limitations like motion sickness, the need for large structures, and significant energy demands. The simplicity of Star Trek's gravity systems is also unrealistic. On starships, gravity remains consistent even during combat, high-speed maneuvers, or damage to the ship. In reality, maintaining gravity in such a precise and stable way would be incredibly difficult, especially under varying conditions in space. The ease with which Star Trek turns gravity on and off is another major divergence from real science. Gravity in real life can't simply be switched off with a button. On the International Space Station, for example, astronauts are in a continuous state of freefall, and creating an artificial gravity switch remains a distant dream. Real-world space missions have to account for the effects of microgravity on the human body, like muscle atrophy and bone density loss. In Star Trek, the presence of artificial gravity eliminates these concerns, but without such technology in real life, space agencies must develop rigorous exercise programs and health countermeasures for astronauts. In Star Trek, gravity is uniform across the entire ship, no matter its size or layout. In a rotating space station or any real-world scenario involving artificial gravity, gravity would vary, depending on distance from the center of rotation. This means areas closer to the center would experience weaker gravity, which isn't a problem in Star Trek's universe. There's also no mention in Star Trek of the potential dangers of gravity technology failing. In real life, losing artificial gravity suddenly could have catastrophic effects, but the series avoids exploring this. Gravity on the starship seems unshakable, even during major technical malfunctions. The Star Trek universe also ignores the effects of gravity on fuel consumption and propulsion. In reality, gravity requires mass, and the more mass a spacecraft has, the more fuel is needed to move it. In Star Trek, ships with gravity systems travel faster than light without any reference to the energy costs of maintaining that gravity. While Star Trek's gravity technology is science fiction, it has inspired real scientists to think about ways to make space travel more comfortable. The concept of easily creating gravity pushes researchers to explore innovative solutions, even though we aren't anywhere close to the kind of gravity manipulation seen on the Enterprise. In the end, Star Trek's gravity technology serves as a convenient narrative tool, allowing for easier storytelling and more relatable environments. The sleek, effortless systems may not be grounded in real science, but they inspire us to imagine what might one day be possible. NASA has been exploring the concept of artificial gravity for decades, primarily focusing on its potential to counteract the negative effects of long-term exposure to microgravity. The goal is to reduce health risks for astronauts during extended missions, such as those to Mars. Research into artificial gravity has gained momentum as space agencies look to deeper space exploration. One of NASA's main areas of research involves rotating habitats. By spinning a spacecraft or space station, centrifugal force could be used to simulate gravity. NASA has conducted numerous studies to determine the optimal size and speed for such rotating systems to ensure astronauts can live and work comfortably. NASA has also studied the effects of short-radius centrifuges, which would allow astronauts to experience artificial gravity in smaller, spinning environments. These systems would require astronauts to spend a portion of their day inside the centrifuge to counteract the negative effects of weightlessness, such as muscle and bone loss. The primary challenge with rotating habitats is the Coriolis effect, which can cause dizziness and disorientation. NASA's research aims to find ways to minimize these effects, possibly through specific rotation speeds, or by carefully designing the structure to reduce uneven forces inside the spacecraft. In addition to rotation, NASA has considered constant acceleration as a way to generate artificial gravity. If a spacecraft could continuously accelerate at 1g, it would simulate Earth-like gravity during the journey. However, current propulsion technologies are not advanced enough to sustain constant acceleration over long distances. NASA has also collaborated with international space agencies to study the effects of artificial gravity in space. Experiments aboard the International Space Station have provided valuable insights into how the human body responds to different levels of gravity, contributing to the ongoing development of artificial gravity solutions. Another avenue of research involves countermeasures that mimic some of the benefits of artificial gravity without actually generating it. These include advanced exercise regimens and medications that help mitigate the physical degradation caused by long-term weightlessness. While not a substitute for artificial gravity, these solutions could complement future gravity systems. In recent years, NASA has begun to seriously consider artificial gravity as part of its plans for missions to Mars. The long journey to the Red Planet, coupled with the extended time astronauts would spend in its low-gravity environment, present significant health risks. Artificial gravity could help maintain astronauts' health over the course of such a mission. NASA's Human Research Program is also looking into how artificial gravity could impact not only the body, but also the mind. Mental well-being is critical for astronauts on long missions, and providing a more Earth-like environment with gravity could help reduce stress, improve sleep, and maintain cognitive function. One of the key questions NASA is working to answer is whether partial gravity, like that found on the Moon or Mars, is enough to maintain human health over long periods. Artificial gravity could be tailored to specific missions, providing more or less gravity depending on the destination, but how much gravity is necessary remains unclear. NASA's research also considers the technical challenges of implementing artificial gravity. Designing spacecraft that can rotate or accelerate efficiently without jeopardizing other mission objectives requires innovative engineering solutions. Weight, fuel consumption, and structural stability are all factors being carefully studied. NASA has conducted ground-based research using centrifuges to simulate the effects of artificial gravity on the body. These studies help scientists understand how various gravity levels affect things like blood flow, muscle use, and balance. The data from these studies will guide future spacecraft design. NASA's ongoing research into artificial gravity is part of a broader effort to enable long-duration space missions. While a perfect solution has yet to be found, the research is bringing us closer to understanding how to support human life in space for extended periods, making the prospect of traveling to Mars and beyond more feasible. The potential benefits. The International Space Station has served as a critical platform for studying the effects of long-term exposure to microgravity. While the ISS itself doesn't generate artificial gravity, it has been used to conduct experiments that explore how humans adapt to weightlessness. These studies are crucial in guiding future artificial gravity research. One of the main goals aboard the ISS is to understand how extended periods in microgravity impact the human body. Astronauts on the ISS experience muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and fluid shifts due to the absence of gravity. The data collected helps scientists evaluate how artificial gravity might mitigate these issues. NASA and international partners have conducted a variety of countermeasure experiments on the ISS. These range from advanced exercise protocols to wearable sensors that monitor how astronauts' bodies react to zero gravity. These findings could inform how artificial gravity systems are designed to support human health. While the ISS doesn't have a rotating section or a gravity simulator, smaller centrifuge experiments have been used in the past. These mini-centrifuges test how short bursts of artificial gravity might influence the health of astronauts over time. This helps researchers understand if short-term gravity exposure could counteract the effects of microgravity. Researchers aboard the ISS have also studied how artificial gravity might benefit other living organisms. Experiments with plants and small animals have shown how gravity, or the lack of it, affects growth, development, and biological functions. These findings are vital for planning sustainable life support systems on future missions. One of the challenges with artificial gravity experiments on the ISS is the limited space available for larger equipment like centrifuges. This restricts the scope of gravity simulation studies, though it also encourages innovative approaches to experimenting with gravity in confined spaces. The ISS has also been a testing ground for simulating different gravity levels, such as those on Mars or the Moon. While full artificial gravity isn't feasible on the ISS, experiments have been designed to mimic lower gravity environments to see how the body responds. This provides insight into how artificial gravity might be customized for different planetary conditions. Fluid dynamics experiments on the ISS have also helped scientists understand how liquids behave without gravity. This knowledge is important because it informs how artificial gravity systems might handle water, fuel, and other fluids in space. Ensuring that these systems work properly is essential for long-term missions. ISS experiments have also studied the psychological effects of living without gravity. Isolation, disorientation, and sleep disturbances are common challenges in space. These insights are guiding how future spacecraft with artificial gravity might be designed to support mental health as well as physical well-being. Understanding how the human body adapts to the transitions between gravity and microgravity is another area of focus. Returning. The European Space Agency, or ESA, has been actively involved in artificial gravity research, focusing on how this technology could support future space exploration missions. Like NASA, ESA sees artificial gravity as a potential solution to the health challenges posed by long-term weightlessness in space. ESA's approach to artificial gravity often involves ground-based studies. One of their most well-known projects is the bed rest studies. In these experiments, volunteers lie in bed for weeks or months to simulate the effects of microgravity, while scientists study how their bodies change over time. Artificial gravity, in the form of short-radius centrifuges, is sometimes introduced to see how it can reverse these effects. ESA has also explored rotating environments to simulate gravity. By using centrifuges, both in labs and in flight simulations, ESA studies how controlled artificial gravity might be implemented in future space missions. These experiments are essential for understanding the best rotation speeds and durations for creating a safe and effective gravity experience. One of the challenges ESA focuses on is the human body's response to intermittent artificial gravity. Continuous gravity generation, like rotating habitats, may not always be practical, so researchers study whether periodic exposure to gravity is enough to counteract the effects of prolonged weightlessness. ESA's research on artificial gravity has included international collaboration. Working alongside NASA and other space agencies, ESA helps conduct joint experiments, sharing data that brings us closer to understanding how to create practical gravity systems for space stations or interplanetary missions. ESA's centrifuge facility in the Netherlands plays a key role in these studies. The facility allows scientists to simulate different gravity levels, including lunar and Martian gravity, and test how these conditions affect human physiology. The data gathered here will inform the design of artificial gravity systems tailored to different space environments. Artificial gravity is also a key component of ESA's long-term vision for missions to Mars. As ESA works on strategies for extended space travel, the health risks of microgravity, such as muscle and bone loss, are major concerns. Artificial gravity could be an essential countermeasure on these long-duration flights. ESA has also participated in parabolic flight campaigns, where aircraft perform rapid climbs and dives to simulate weightlessness and low-gravity conditions. These flights allow ESA to test how artificial gravity might work in microgravity and evaluate how quickly astronauts could adapt to it. The research isn't limited to human health. ESA also studies how artificial gravity could affect other biological systems, such as plant growth, which is critical for developing life support systems in space. By understanding how gravity influences plant biology, ESA is helping to lay the groundwork for sustainable farming in space. ESA's space medicine team plays a central role in investigating artificial gravity. By focusing on both the physical and mental health of astronauts, the team examines how artificial gravity could help with more than just muscle and bone maintenance, including maintaining cardiovascular health and cognitive function during long missions. One area of interest for ESA is how artificial gravity might influence blood flow and fluid distribution in the body. In microgravity, fluids shift upward, leading to swelling in the face and head. ESA's research aims to understand whether artificial gravity could prevent these fluid imbalances and their associated health problems. ESA has also contributed to artificial gravity studies aboard the ISS. While full gravity simulation isn't possible on the station, ESA has been involved in smaller experiments that mimic gravity effects on a limited scale. These tests help build a foundation for future spacecraft designs that might incorporate artificial gravity. As part of their work, ESA investigates how artificial gravity could help astronauts transition back to Earth after long missions. Returning to Earth's gravity after months in space can be a shock to the body, and ESA hopes to find ways that artificial gravity might ease this transition. ESA is also looking toward the future, where artificial gravity could become a standard feature of space exploration. Their research is helping to inform the development of rotating space habitats or artificial gravity chambers, which could make extended human presence in space more feasible and comfortable. Ultimately, ESA's contributions to artificial gravity research are helping to pave the way for the next era of space exploration. As missions grow longer and more ambitious, the need for artificial gravity will become increasingly important to ensure the health and safety of astronauts on journeys to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. SpaceX has emerged as a key player in advancing space exploration, and while their current focus is on launching rockets and developing reusable spacecraft, they've contributed indirectly to the conversation around artificial gravity. With their sights set on Mars, the challenges of long-duration space travel, including the effects of microgravity, are becoming central to their plans. Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, has mentioned artificial gravity as a possible feature for future spacecraft. As the company develops larger and more ambitious spacecraft, such as Starship, the need for solutions to combat muscle and bone loss during long missions is critical. Artificial gravity could be part of that solution. One idea that has been discussed is the possibility of using a tethered system between two spacecraft to create rotation and simulate gravity. By connecting two spacecraft with a cable and spinning them around a common center, centrifugal force could generate artificial gravity for the crew during the journey to Mars. The private sector's involvement in space exploration has accelerated innovation, and SpaceX is no exception. While artificial gravity isn't yet a focus of their active research, the rapid progress in spacecraft design and propulsion by companies like SpaceX opens the door for future developments in this area. SpaceX's reusable rockets have already revolutionized space travel by significantly reducing the cost of getting to orbit. With cheaper launches, the possibility of testing new technologies like artificial gravity on smaller missions becomes more feasible. Private sector companies have the flexibility to experiment in ways that large government agencies might not. Other private companies like Blue Origin and Sierra Nevada are also contributing to space innovation. Though their efforts are currently more focused on suborbital tourism and space station modules, these companies are laying the groundwork for the future. In time, artificial gravity may become a practical concern for them as well. SpaceX's collaboration with NASA on the Crew Dragon spacecraft has provided valuable insights into human spaceflight. While Crew Dragon doesn't feature artificial gravity, the lessons learned from sending astronauts to space are shaping future spacecraft designs that might include gravity simulation. The rapid pace at which private companies are developing space technologies has also accelerated the timeline for when artificial gravity could be considered. What once seemed like a distant dream is now moving closer to reality, as companies like SpaceX push the boundaries of what's possible in space travel. For SpaceX, the long-term goal is Mars colonization, and that journey would likely require some form of artificial gravity. The company's ability to think creatively about space travel solutions suggests that they will continue to explore innovative ways to keep astronauts healthy on such a long voyage. SpaceX's Starship, designed to carry large numbers of people and cargo to distant planets, has the potential to incorporate artificial gravity systems in future iterations. As the spacecraft evolves, there may be more opportunities to test rotating sections or other gravity-generating technologies. By advancing reusable rocket technology, SpaceX has also made it more affordable to launch experiments that could test artificial gravity concepts in orbit. These tests would be crucial for refining our understanding of how to implement artificial gravity on a large scale. Private sector companies also bring a commercial perspective to space travel. For long-term space tourism or human settlements on other planets, artificial gravity will be essential for providing a more Earth-like environment. The development of such technology will likely become a priority as commercial space ventures grow. SpaceX's progress in creating reliable, cost-effective spacecraft also supports the development of infrastructure that could enable artificial gravity experiments in space. As the private sector builds space stations and habitats, the inclusion of gravity simulation could be a natural next step. The collaboration between SpaceX and other private companies, combined with their partnerships. International collaborations have become crucial in advancing gravity technology for space exploration. With the shared goal of long-term human spaceflight, agencies from across the globe are pooling their expertise and resources to tackle the challenge of artificial gravity. These partnerships allow for a more comprehensive approach to research and development. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, and JAXA have all contributed to gravity-related research, often working together on experiments aboard the International Space Station. By sharing data and knowledge, these agencies accelerate the progress toward understanding how artificial gravity could be used to protect astronauts' health during deep space missions. The International Space Station itself is a testament to international cooperation. While it doesn't feature artificial gravity, it serves as a platform for studying the effects of microgravity on the human body. The results of these studies are shared among the partner agencies, helping everyone refine their approach to potential gravity solutions. In addition to governmental space agencies, international collaborations also extend to the private sector. Companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Boeing are working alongside these agencies to test new technologies that could one day enable artificial gravity. The blending of public and private expertise creates a more dynamic and innovative research environment. Artificial gravity technology is particularly relevant for missions to Mars, a goal shared by multiple spacefaring nations. International partnerships allow countries to divide the cost and risk of developing this technology, ensuring that no single nation bears the burden alone. This collaborative approach also speeds up the timeline for potential breakthroughs. One major project that showcases international collaboration is the development of rotating habitats. Several space agencies have researched centrifugal systems that could be implemented in future spacecraft. By working together, they share designs, test data, and engineering insights that make these complex systems more feasible. The European Space Agency has been a strong partner in artificial gravity research, often collaborating with NASA and Roscosmos. Their contributions include studies on human physiology and how the body might respond to partial or full gravity environments. ESA's bedrest studies, conducted with international participation, offer vital clues for future gravity systems. Japan's space agency JAXA has also contributed to artificial gravity research, particularly through their biological studies. JAXA has focused on how gravity, or the lack of it, affects living organisms. Their findings on plant growth and animal development in space could inform how gravity systems are integrated into future habitats. Russia's space program, with its long history of human spaceflight, brings valuable experience to the table. Roscosmos has conducted extensive research on the effects of space travel on the human body, and their expertise is key in developing countermeasures like artificial gravity. Russia's contributions, alongside other nations, are vital to understanding the full picture of space health. Artificial gravity research isn't limited to space agencies alone. Universities and research institutions around the world are involved in exploring how gravity could be simulated in space. Many of these academic efforts are backed by international partnerships, with cross-border teams working on experiments and prototypes. The idea of international collaboration extends beyond research and into policy. Developing artificial gravity systems for future missions will require new agreements on how resources are shared and how these technologies are used. International partnerships are already laying the groundwork for these discussions. In the realm of space exploration, collaboration often means leveraging each nation's strengths. The expertise in physics, biology, engineering, and space medicine that different countries bring to the table is crucial for solving the artificial gravity puzzle. No one country has all the answers, but together, emerging technologies are gradually paving the way for the development of artificial gravity in space. One of the most promising is advancements in materials science. Lightweight yet durable materials are being designed to withstand the stresses of rotation and the forces generated by artificial gravity systems. Another area of progress is in propulsion technology. Concepts like ion propulsion and even nuclear propulsion could provide the sustained acceleration needed to simulate gravity on long-duration space missions. These systems are being refined to be more efficient, which could make constant acceleration a viable method for creating gravity. Centrifugal systems are also evolving. Researchers are experimenting with small-scale centrifuges to better understand how they could work on a spacecraft. These systems could one day be used to provide intermittent artificial gravity by rotating small sections of a spacecraft, allowing astronauts to spend time in a gravity environment. Robotics and automation are likely to play a key role in the development of artificial gravity habitats. Autonomous systems could assist in constructing and maintaining rotating habitats in space, reducing the risks and labor demands on human crews. This would make the creation of larger, more complex structures more feasible. Artificial intelligence is another emerging technology that could aid in managing artificial gravity systems. AI could monitor and adjust the systems in real time, optimizing the rotation speed, energy usage, and structural integrity to ensure that everything operates smoothly during long missions. Energy storage technologies are also advancing, which is critical for the development of artificial gravity. New forms of batteries and energy harvesting systems could store the immense power needed to operate artificial gravity continuously, especially on missions that rely on long-term rotation or acceleration. Another technology on the horizon is 3D printing, particularly in space. 3D printing could allow for the construction of parts for artificial gravity systems directly in space, reducing the need to transport heavy materials from Earth. This technology is already being tested on the International Space Station. Magnetic levitation is an emerging field that, while not yet capable of simulating gravity, holds potential for creating environments where magnetic fields simulate some of the effects of weight. Although still in its early stages, magnetic systems could offer a unique alternative to traditional gravity simulation methods. Cryogenic technology is advancing as well, and its role in artificial gravity might come in the form of cooling superconducting materials. These materials could be used to create powerful magnets or energy systems that help sustain gravity-like forces, especially in rotating environments. Developments in virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR, could support artificial gravity by helping astronauts train for transitions between microgravity and artificial gravity environments. VR could simulate these conditions on Earth, preparing crews for the physical sensations of different gravity levels. Nanotechnology is another field that could play a crucial role. With the ability to manipulate materials at the atomic level, scientists could create stronger, lighter structures for rotating habitats. This would help reduce the overall mass of spacecraft while maintaining the structural integrity needed for artificial gravity. Another. In the next 50 to 100 years, we may see artificial gravity become a standard feature of space exploration. As technology advances, rotating habitats or constant acceleration methods could be integrated into spacecraft, allowing astronauts to live and work in environments that closely mimic Earth's gravity. Space stations designed for long-term habitation will likely include artificial gravity to maintain the health of their crews. These structures could be significantly larger than the current International Space Station, with rotating sections that provide gravity to key areas like living quarters and exercise facilities. Mars missions will be a major focus in the coming decades. As humanity prepares to send people to the Red Planet, artificial gravity will become essential for the health of astronauts on the long journey. Future spacecraft may use rotating systems or acceleration to keep the crew in a gravity-simulated environment during the trip. Within the next century, we might also see space tourism become a reality. For that to happen on a large scale, artificial gravity will need to be a key component of space hotels and other tourist infrastructure. Tourists will expect comfort and safety, and that includes environments with gravity similar to Earth. Artificial gravity could play a significant role in space colonies. As humans establish permanent settlements on the Moon, Mars, or beyond, these colonies will need gravity to support long-term health and well-being. We may see rotating habitats or advanced gravity generation systems integrated into these settlements. By the end of the century, the technology for generating artificial gravity could become more sophisticated, potentially moving beyond rotating habitats. Breakthroughs in physics may allow us to manipulate gravity directly, creating gravity fields without the need for rotation or acceleration, though such developments remain speculative. Spacecraft propulsion technologies will likely evolve significantly, making constant acceleration a more practical method for simulating gravity. With advancements in energy generation, such as fusion or antimatter propulsion, spacecraft could maintain steady acceleration, providing a continuous gravity-like environment for long-duration missions. Future space agencies will need to address the ethical implications of artificial gravity. Questions about who has access to these technologies, how they're used, and their long-term impact on human health and society will shape the development and deployment of gravity systems in space. Space-based manufacturing could become a key industry, with 3D printing and robotics playing a central role. By building parts of rotating habitats or gravity systems directly in space, we could reduce the cost and complexity of launching materials from Earth, making artificial gravity more accessible. In the coming decades, collaboration between nations and private companies will likely accelerate the development of artificial gravity. As the commercial space sector grows, new partnerships will form, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and driving innovation faster than ever before. With the rise of space tourism and colonization, we may also see new industries emerge around artificial gravity. Specialized companies could focus solely on designing, building, and maintaining gravity systems for various space applications, from transportation to permanent settlements. Advances in AI and automation will likely play a crucial role in managing artificial gravity systems. AI could monitor and control these systems, ensuring they operate smoothly over long periods without human intervention, which will be critical for long-duration missions far from Earth. By the end of the century, we could have a clearer understanding of how gravity affects human biology over multiple generations. If humans are born and raised in artificial gravity environments on other planets or space stations, we'll need to study how this impacts their development, health, and even evolution. The cost of artificial gravity systems is expected to decrease as technology advances. With more efficient materials, better propulsion methods, and breakthroughs in energy storage, it's likely that artificial gravity will become more affordable, enabling a wider range of space missions and settlements. Looking forward, the next 100 years could see artificial gravity evolve from a theoretical concept to a fully integrated aspect of human space exploration. With each breakthrough, we get closer to building a future where life beyond Earth is not only possible but sustainable for generations to come. To make artificial gravity a reality, significant breakthroughs are required in materials science. Current materials may not be strong or lightweight enough to support the rotating structures or systems needed to generate gravity in space. New advanced materials will need to be developed to withstand the stresses of rotation and prolonged space exposure. Energy generation is another critical area where breakthroughs are needed. Simulating gravity, especially through constant acceleration or rotation, demands a large and steady supply of power. Developing efficient energy sources such as fusion reactors or advanced solar power systems will be essential to sustain artificial gravity for long missions. Propulsion systems must also evolve. For methods like constant acceleration to work, propulsion technologies will need to be far more efficient than they are today. Ion drives or nuclear propulsion could offer solutions, but these systems will need significant improvements before they can support the sustained thrust necessary to simulate gravity. Another breakthrough will be in the field of automation and robotics. Maintaining and adjusting artificial gravity systems in space will require advanced, reliable robots that can operate in harsh environments. These robots will need to build, repair, and manage gravity systems with minimal human intervention. Understanding how gravity affects the human body at different levels will be key. Research is needed to determine how much gravity is required to maintain muscle and bone health during long space missions. This understanding will help define the necessary parameters for artificial gravity systems. In addition to physical breakthroughs, advances in computational modeling will be vital. Simulating how artificial gravity systems will perform in space, especially over long durations, is complex. Powerful computational models will help engineers design systems that are efficient, safe, and effective. Breakthroughs in rotational technology are also necessary. Creating rotating habitats that produce artificial gravity comes with many engineering challenges, such as ensuring uniform gravity across the structure and preventing motion sickness. Advances in this area will make rotating habitats more practical for long-term use. Developments in thermal regulation systems will be essential as well. Artificial gravity systems, especially those that rely on rotation, will generate heat. Efficient ways to dissipate this heat without adding excessive weight or energy requirements will be needed for these systems to operate safely in space. Health monitoring technology will need to advance alongside artificial gravity. Systems that track the physiological impacts of artificial gravity on astronauts will be crucial for ensuring long-term health and safety. These monitoring tools will provide real-time data on how the body adapts to different gravity environments. Breakthroughs in space construction methods, such as 3D printing or in-space assembly, will also be key. Building large structures in orbit, like those required for artificial gravity, will be more feasible if we can construct them in space, rather than launching them from Earth. This would lower costs and increase flexibility in design. A better understanding of long-term habitation in space is necessary to refine artificial gravity systems. As humans spend more time in space, data from these missions will inform the development of more effective gravity systems that cater to human needs during extended space flights or permanent colonies. Another breakthrough needed is in international cooperation. The development of artificial gravity will require significant investment and shared knowledge across multiple countries and organizations. Strong international partnerships will be crucial to pooling resources and expertise for this ambitious goal. Safety protocols for artificial gravity systems will also need to evolve. Any system designed to simulate gravity in space must have fail-safes and redundancies in place. Advances in safety engineering will ensure that artificial gravity systems can operate without risking the lives of astronauts during long missions. Artificial intelligence will need to play a significant role in managing artificial gravity systems. AI will help monitor and adjust these systems in real time, optimizing energy use and system performance. Developing more sophisticated AI tools capable of handling these tasks will be essential to making artificial gravity a reality. Ultimately, breakthroughs in a wide range of fields, from propulsion and materials science to AI and robotics, will be needed to bring artificial gravity from theory to practice. With sustained effort and innovation, we can achieve this critical advancement in space exploration. Artificial gravity will play a crucial role in the future of space tourism and exploration. For space tourists, the novelty of weightlessness may be thrilling at first, but long-term stays in zero gravity come with health risks and discomfort. Artificial gravity could provide a more comfortable experience, making extended vacations in space more appealing. Space tourism companies will need to prioritize the safety and health of their customers, and artificial gravity could help mitigate the effects of prolonged weightlessness, such as muscle loss and bone density reduction. This could open the door to longer, more luxurious stays in space hotels or on private space stations. For exploration, artificial gravity is essential for missions to Mars, the Moon, and beyond. Long journeys in zero gravity weaken astronauts' bodies, which could leave them vulnerable when they arrive on other planets. By maintaining physical health during transit, artificial gravity will ensure crews are in peak condition when they reach their destination. On the surface of Mars or the Moon, artificial gravity could be used in base camps or habitats. These environments would benefit from gravity simulation, allowing astronauts to live more comfortably and maintain their physical health while conducting scientific research or preparing for further exploration. Rotating habitats are one of the most practical solutions for creating artificial gravity during these long missions. As technology advances, we may see spacecraft designed with rotating sections that allow astronauts to experience Earth-like gravity for part of their journey, reducing the physical toll of space travel. In the context of deep space exploration, where missions could last years, artificial gravity becomes even more critical. Crews will need to remain healthy and capable of performing complex tasks, and artificial gravity could play a vital role in maintaining both their physical and mental well-being during these extended voyages. For space tourists, artificial gravity could also provide a sense of normalcy. Rather than floating around aimlessly, tourists could experience space in a more familiar way, with the ability to walk, eat, and sleep just as they do on Earth. This could make space travel more accessible to a broader audience. The tourism industry may also develop hybrid systems that allow travelers to enjoy both weightlessness and gravity. Space hotels might feature artificial gravity in certain areas, like dining or sleeping quarters, while other sections allow guests to experience the unique sensation of zero gravity. Artificial gravity systems could help prevent the common issues associated with microgravity, such as fluid shifts and vision problems. By providing a gravity environment, space tourists and explorers alike would be less likely to experience these uncomfortable or harmful side effects, making space travel safer and more enjoyable. Long-term space colonization will likely depend on the development of artificial gravity. Settlers on other planets will need environments that mimic Earth's gravity to thrive. Without it, the health impacts of low-gravity environments, like those on Mars, could make permanent habitation difficult. Artificial gravity will also make it easier for explorers to conduct scientific experiments. Many types of research, especially in fields like biology and chemistry, require gravity to proceed as they would on Earth. Having areas with simulated gravity will enhance the capabilities of space labs and research stations. The psychological benefits of artificial gravity shouldn't be underestimated either. Constantly adapting to microgravity can be mentally exhausting, especially on long missions. Giving astronauts and tourists a space where they can feel the familiar pull of gravity could improve mood, reduce stress, and help prevent psychological burnout. Artificial gravity may also reduce the need for intensive exercise regimens currently required in space. On the ISS, astronauts spend hours exercising daily to counteract muscle and bone loss. With artificial gravity, these routines could be less demanding, freeing up time for other tasks or leisure. For space exploration, artificial gravity will enable missions to venture further into space. As we explore asteroids, moons, and distant planets, artificial gravity will ensure that astronauts remain in good health, making it possible to undertake more ambitious missions without compromising the crew's well-being. Ultimately, artificial gravity will be a key factor in making space travel sustainable, both for exploration and tourism. By providing safe, comfortable environments, it will allow humans to explore and experience space like never before, unlocking the full potential of life beyond Earth. Throughout this video, we've explored the fascinating topic of artificial gravity and its potential to revolutionize space exploration and tourism. We began by examining the scientific principles behind gravity itself, from Isaac Newton's law of universal gravitation to Einstein's theory of general relativity. These fundamental concepts lay the groundwork for understanding why artificial gravity could be so important for future space missions. We then looked at how artificial gravity could mitigate the health challenges posed by long-term exposure to microgravity. Without the pull of gravity, astronauts experience muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and a range of other physical effects. By simulating gravity, whether through rotating habitats or constant acceleration, we can help maintain the health and well-being of those who spend extended periods in space. And next, we delved into the various methods that could be used to create artificial gravity, such as centrifugal force and magnetic fields. We also discussed the potential for constant acceleration as a way to simulate gravity during space travel. Each of these methods comes with its own set of challenges, but they also offer promising solutions for the future. We also considered the practical applications of artificial gravity in both space tourism and exploration. As private companies push the boundaries of commercial space travel, the ability to offer a gravity-like environment could make space tourism more comfortable and accessible. For long-term exploration missions to Mars and beyond, artificial gravity could be essential for keeping astronauts in peak physical condition. International collaborations and private sector contributions are also playing a key role in driving artificial gravity research. Agencies like NASA, ESA, and companies like SpaceX are working together to overcome the technical and financial challenges of developing this technology. These partnerships are crucial to making artificial gravity a reality. In addition to the technical challenges, we discussed the long-term ethical implications of space colonization and artificial gravity. Questions about resource allocation, health impacts, and how we should interact with potential extraterrestrial environments are important considerations as we move toward a future where humans live and work in space. We also highlighted some of the emerging technologies that could help make artificial gravity feasible, including advancements in materials science, energy storage, and propulsion. Breakthroughs in these areas will be key to solving the technical challenges that artificial gravity presents. Looking ahead, we made predictions for the next 50 to 100 years, imagining a future where artificial gravity is a standard part of space travel and colonization. As technology continues to evolve, artificial gravity could enable humans to explore farther into space, live in space for extended periods, and even establish colonies on other planets. Finally, we addressed the importance of balancing innovation with safety. While the potential benefits of artificial gravity are vast, the risks must be carefully managed. Ongoing research and development will be crucial in ensuring that artificial gravity systems are safe, reliable, and effective for all future space missions. If you enjoyed this deep dive into artificial gravity and want to learn more about space exploration and technology, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. We have plenty of other exciting videos that cover a wide range of topics, so be sure to check those out as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.